Chapter 11. Bank. After eating a meal in the morning, I found Rayla at the Polaris Bank. The process to open an account was easy, but the reason more people didn't have one was due to the fact that you needed to open an account under the name of a verified business. Those in the black market evaded taxes in just about every way. Since most currency was tangible and because nobody in the black market wanted to pay taxes, it was difficult for the kingdom to enforce it. But this also meant that banks which didn't enforce tax laws were rare, since they were an institution that could be easily and formally attacked by the kingdom. There was a slew of issues that these banks had to deal with, and as a result, they only accepted clients who were verified by a company that worked in the black market. Of course, the Polaris Bank was even more strict. Not just any black market company could do business with them, but Plex had enough of a reputation to get just about anything, apparently, so his company and employees could register with this prestigious institution. The Polaris Bank was nothing to joke about. According to Rayla, it handled enough money to rival the entire kingdom in sheer monetary throughput. That was because the richest people in the black market let their finances be handled by this bank. Naturally, this made Polaris an even heavier behemoth than I initially thought. The place wasn't overly luxurious, but it still looked like a palace when I walked into it. Marble floors inlaid with gold, huge hallways adorned with paintings or statues, and the most courteous clerks I've ever interacted with. Rayla carried with her the proven identity of the company. Plex's delivery service was formerly known as Divine Distribution. It even had a crest, which was one of the things required to prove the identity. After that, it wasn't long after that I was able to open an account. I was surprised a bit by their system of profit. Basically, I had to pay a certain amount of money to buy a certain sized account. For the lowest tier, they would store 500 gold bullion for me, which was 500,000 coin, and it would cost 0.5% of the total storage, 2.5 gold bullion, every month in order to keep the account open. It was yet another bill on top of Maxwell's, but nothing I couldn't handle. Considering my pay, I was still profiting amazingly. Plus, that wasn't considering the perks of being a client of the Polaris Bank. After opening an account, I immediately deposited all the spare coin I had on me. With last night's profit of 25,000 coin, along with almost a month worth of working, 33,228 coin has been deposited into your account. That's what the clerk told me, and the number had me giddy for a bit. Rayla giggled from beside me as the clerk left to finalize things, causing me to be curious. Hey, how much do you have stored? Do you really want to hear that number? I do. Close to 30 million coin? Huh? I gawked. That was 30,000 gold bullion. I asked with anticipation, does this job really make you that much? God, no. For a while I was in the military, which made me quite a bit more after I hit the high ranks. And when I left, I was referred by a friend to work at the Clockwork Association. I made even more there before eventually settling in at Plex's company. So while I still make decent money, it's nothing amazing. Wow. I slowly nodded as my mind drifted. How old was Rayla? She looked young, no older than 30. but her words told me that she had many years of experience. And considering that this world was full of magic, it wasn't crazy to think that lifespans were longer. Kind of like the mythical elves that could retain their youthful appearances, even at old ages. I suddenly wanted to ask how old she was, but that wasn't very tactful. So, what are you? 60? Instead, I guessed, earning a snide smirk. You're going to do great with girls when you enter the magisterium. I happen to be a blunt person, especially when I know that you're probably more like half that age. Something like that. At the very least, I'm not that much older than you. I'm 22. Really? This time she looked at me with surprise. I scratched my roughly shaven chin that betrayed my age. I often got told that I looked older than I was. So when I smiled at Rayla, she scoffed and smacked my chest. You kids these days. Hey now, you're not that much older, right? Shut up. I make more money than you. Oh no, my fragile ego. We laughed a bit until the clerk came back. Here you go, John Cooper. The money has been stored and your card has been prepared. Here. The clerk handed me a card. When I felt it, I realized how unique it was. The border of the card was made of gold metal, and its body was like a window that revealed a flowing black film. On this film, I could see the symbol of the Polaris Bank. The clerk explained how to use it. All your money is stored within this bank, but through this card, you can retrieve any amount of your money at any given time in any denomination. So, if you desired, you could pull out 33 gold bullion, 330 gold coin, 3,300 silver bullion, or 33,000 silver coin. It all comes from that card right there. Simply tap the symbol and designate how much you wish to retrieve. Oh. Doing as he said, I tapped the golden symbol with my finger. Then 4 sliders appeared. I designated a single gold bullion, and with the confirmation, the black film fluctuated. You can simply dump out the coin or reach in and pull it out. Oh. I smiled as I reached into the black film, feeling the coin and pulling out the bullion. Cool. As your company is a platinum level client, you have been granted a gold level account and card. This means that not only can you retrieve your coin, but you can also deposit your coin simply by inserting it into the card at any time. You should deposit more money and reach the next level, so you can be granted a platinum level card that comes with even more functionality. Right. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure. If you require anything else, just let me know. The clerk left as I continued to play with the card. It was amazing how I could simply throw the coin in and out of the card. It was literally a portal for my money. Magic is amazing. Rayla smiled at my playful attitude. All right, be sure you put all your payments straight into that card when you get them. You don't need to get robbed and lose everything. Also, it only works with your specific crest, so don't worry should other people get a hold of it. Oh, even cooler. With that, the 2 of us left the bank. Our next stop was the warehouse. There, we only found Plex, who looked much better than yesterday, yet still beat up. He smiled at us. Hey, you two. Have fun at the bank? This card is cool. Yes, it is. And you'll be using it plenty today. Your jobs are on the table. All of them need to be done by morning. Walking over, Rayla and I saw 8 sheets on the table. All of them required us to head to location, grab an item and our payment, and deliver the item to the auction house. For these jobs, our clients were located all across the city. Some were close, some came from the Founders Market, and others were farther away. I could already tell it was going to be a long night. We should get started. Rayla sighed while scooping up the papers. Our warehouse was located just outside the city center, putting us right in between the Black Spider and Founders Markets. Making a quick decision, the two of us decided to handle 3 of the jobs that came from the Founders Market. Of course, they were also the most dangerous. Anything going to the auction was a valuable item, and these items were most vulnerable while in transit. So us delivery men, while neutral and immune in the black market, were often targeted by those who didn't care. Being neutral and immune simply meant that should we kill those from, let's say, the Clockwork Association after a deal gone wrong, we wouldn't be systematically hunted. Conflicts were always considered personal and wouldn't escalate. But again, there were those who simply didn't care. We ran into a few of such people after we had picked up our 3rd item. While crossing through an alleyway, Rayla and I were suddenly surrounded by 4 men. 2 carried swords, while the other 2 seemed to be warlocks. I smiled and sighed while looking at the leader. "Hello, gentlemen. How can we help you?" "Drop those packages." "Oh, sure thing. Here's the first one." Bang! An explosion rang out as I fired my flintlock. The man in front of me froze for a few seconds before falling to his knees, a large hole now in his chest. I turned to the others with a smile. "Who wants the second one?" They were silent for a moment before running off, disappearing from our sights. Rayla chuckled as we continued walking. "How bold of you." "After escaping from the trenches yesterday, I've become severely desensitized. Besides, killing one and scaring 3 off is better than making them think they have a chance and having to kill all 4. Still, I'd rather not have to at all." "Yeah, I understand, but that's just how the black market is. Don't feel guilty." She pat my back and we continued on our way. Fortunately, everything after that was uneventful. Perhaps we got lucky, but we delivered everything to the auction house without a hitch. I also got paid another 14,000 coin, even after dividing the profits with Rayla, putting my total savings at nearly 48,000 coin. With that, another day ended. The following day was yet again filled with package deliveries. Rayla and I only exchanged a few hostilities with some unsavory individuals, and while the fights generally ended quickly, both of us did end up exchanging blows. That hurt like hell. I had plenty of wounds that were still in the process of healing, and getting punched or kicked only ended with my stitches getting broken. After killing several and scaring off the rest, we finished our deliveries, headed to the hospital, and got fixed up. Not even those difficulties could put a damper on our mood, though. I didn't know what it was, but Rayla and I continued to have fun with each other. The jokes were smooth, the topics kept flowing, The banter was witty. We just clicked. The two of us seemed like best friends, even though we had only known each other for a couple of days. Of course, there was still plenty we didn't know about each other. It was hard keeping myself from alluding to Earth, and although Rayla had told me something about her former occupations, she never spoke about it in more detail. And I could tell that she had something to hide. I noticed the few times that we got on the topic of relationships. She often poked at how I had no girlfriend, so I would poke back, as I naturally didn't see a boyfriend or husband with her. She played it off, but I could tell how her mood went down. That only happened once, and I tactfully never touched the topic again. Not that she stopped telling me to go get a girl. While we walked, she would often scout some hot ladies, mention how big their boobs were, and tell me to talk to them. I would always refuse, of course, but it was still funny. So another day passed, and finally it was time for the auction. The Black Spider Market was always flooded during the day of the auction. Thousands of people would flood in from all over the city, even from beyond the city, to be here for the auction. After all, while it wasn't the biggest auction in the kingdom, it was definitely the most valuable. But this month's auction was in a weird spot. The auction following the big quarterly auction was always smaller, since the most expensive items were just sold off. That would usually mean that there were little people, but there weren't. In fact, Rayla told me that the number of people was rather high. There was only one reason for that, and the man himself had messed with me while in the trenches. As the dress code was strict, I ended up spending close to 3,000 coin on a nice suit. Rayla had helped me pick it out just before coming to the auction house. It was a simple black suit with gold-threaded embroidery and designs. My white shirt was covered with a black vest, and Rayla had me buy a large trench coat. Apparently, that was the style here. All the clothes were supposedly enchanted in some way, allowing them to fit to the user. They were also built with attack-resistant fabric. The trench coat could eat an entire spell and keep me safe. Though these features were still limited. As things got more expensive, people stopped tracking prices by coin, and more so by gold bullion. So while I could buy a coat and clothes that were defensively amazing and had awesome features like self-cooling and cleaning, they would cost a few dozen gold bullion. That was for another time. I felt rather amazing as I walked with Rayla into the auction house. We eventually found Plex and the rest of the company before heading to a suite. It was a suite bought by the Tavera family. There, I once again met the patriarch. Goodness, John. How many people have you killed in the last month? You feel very different from the newbie you were when Plex first found you. The 24 new scars on my body would agree with you. I smiled as we shook hands. The older man in front of me stroked his whitening beard after separating. Say, how did things go at the Polaris family? I haven't heard anything. Amazing, actually. Maxwell is an interesting teacher, but what he teaches is good stuff. His call had saved my life a few times now. Wait, Maxwell Albarane? Yeah, that's who I was taken to. The patriarch frowned before turning and looking at Plex. Plex shrugged while munching on some snacks that a maid had brought around, causing the patriarch to shake his head. I see. Well, if it's Maxwell, you can't go wrong. Get as much out of that man as you possibly can. He's getting as much out of me, too. I mean, nearly 4,000 coin a week just for lessons. It's really far more valuable than that, but I will agree that he's a shrewd man. Who are you calling shrewd? We suddenly heard a voice, turning to see a tall man draped in navy blue robes. It was Maxwell, and his presence shocked several people, including the patriarch. Maxwell, I didn't expect to see you here. I had no plans to stop by, but my delinquent student has been missing classes. The summoner approached with a sharp eye, looking me over before huffing. Getting into fights? It pays for your classes, so yeah. I'm sorry I've missed recently, but work has been literally kicking my ass. Now I know that I'll be busy during the auctions. I figured, well, battles will help with your communions anyway. In fact, maybe you should get into more. You. Maxwell suddenly pointed to Plex, who hummed in confusion. Send this kid to, whatever jobs you have in the trenches. What? That place is a good training ground, as lawless as it is complex. Plex started laughing as my face fell. No way in hell am I going back to that hellhole, especially not with the shitty weapons I have now. Yes, you'll need to be stronger, attain better summons, so here. Maxwell reached into his pocket and took out a large crystal and a small book. I took both as he explained. Follow the formations in the book and use that white crystal to cultivate your crest to the next authority. I thought you couldn't do that without the magisterium. They'll overlook it if it's just 1 or 2 levels. It might even help you since you're a bit too old to be entering as an authority one. Oh. I'll omit this week's pay, so don't come back until you get your second authority. Remember, the faster you advance, the higher the chances of your survival. And, Plex, if I find that he isn't in the trenches, I'll be paying you a visit. Do not inhibit my teachings. Yes, sir. Plex chuckled evilly as Maxwell turned to leave. Rayla pat my back in sympathy. It was nice knowing you, John. Shut up. I should take you with me. No thanks, I've paid my dues. And hey, the jobs for the trenches at least pay well. Contrary to what people believe, those gremlins are rich. She laughed as I contemplated how difficult the coming days were going to be. Not long after, the auction began. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to officially announce the beginning of the 4th monthly auction. Chapter 12. Sold. Everyone clapped as the auction started. This was as much of a social convention as it was a time of business. This meant that drinks and food were plentiful among the stands. As the Tavera family was paying for everything in the suite, I didn't keep myself from grabbing anything that looked good. And as I found out, many of the candies were divine while the alcohol was rich. I was one of the few who took a seat by the window. The rest were socializing, including Rayla, who apparently had some friends within the Tavera family. So I was by myself for a while as the introductory items were being showed off. I could hear everything clearly through the glass, the noise being amplified by magic. A colossal goat horn, enough to make a full set of armor or construct the chassis of a carriage. Starting price, 25 gold bullion. I saw a truly massive horn appear on stage. It was at least 10 feet tall and 40 feet long. It really could be used to build the chassis of a vehicle. I've wondered what kind of monstrosity the colossal goat was to have such huge horns. A container of 85 bone-burrowing beetles for any of your alchemical needs. Starting price, 45 gold bullion. That box was worth the entirety of my savings at just the starting price. An air mask constructed from the treated leather of a fire lamb and infused with a grade 4 white crystal. This device can not only filter all the air you breathe, but even boost your stamina. Starting price, 30 gold bullion. That was an interesting one that I might have considered trying to get if I could afford it, but unfortunately, it sold at about 75 gold bullion. The newest prototype of Son's line of transmission devices, the Aerial 8. The details of this device have been purposefully omitted by request of the seller. Starting price, 70 gold bullion. The prices only continued to go up as each item went by. The average price quickly climbed past 100 gold bullion, and every single one was bought casually. Millions of coin being thrown around just like that, and these were just the introductory items. Eventually, the time for introductions were over. More expensive items starting at a minimum of 500 gold bullion started rolling out. From entire sets of armor to crazy intricate weapons, these were high-quality items that could be wielded by those with up to 7 authorities. But nobody seemed to care much. Nobody within my suite paid much mind to those things, and I suppose everyone at this auction was waiting for just one thing. I continued to sit around, eating all the shockingly delicious food that was being handed out. That was until the door swung open again. Maxwell? The sharp summoner came strolling back unannounced. He walked straight up to me. In his hands were 2 items. Air mask and aerial. These were 2 of the introductory items. I slowly grabbed them as he explained. The trenches are filled with toxic fumes and drugged air. You'll want the mask to keep you healthy, and use the aerial to contact people. Also, they said something about Son personally wanting to do some stuff with you in the aerial. If you had let me finish, I would have told you what. Suddenly, another man came striding into the room. He was scrawny, like a scientist, and on his face was a pair of glasses that flashed with displays. They looked like futuristic holographic glasses. He walked over to me, grabbing the aerial, which I had surmised was a magic phone. He spoke with haste, as if his mind were filled with a million thoughts. Son, pleased to meet you. This is a prototype model, okay? Prototype. That means it's not perfect and still needs to be adjusted to suit you until I can create a standardized model. Now, I can't spill all the details, but this thing can basically connect to your mind, to some extent at least. This new feature is limited for now until I work out the kinks, but nonetheless still extremely useful. Also, this thing can work independently, regardless of if there are repeater nodes around you. I believe the maximum pulse transmission is 40 miles in all directions, and standard transmission is 10 miles in all directions.
Trust me, far more capable than whatever else those dogs at Hero Aerial Works are cooking up.
The man, Son, went on a spiel about all the different things that this device could do. In short, it was a phone. This world had phones, apparently, although the ones cheap enough for the common man were limited in function. Still, they provided revolutionary communication abilities. And this man, Son, was the owner of Son Industries. He created these phones, and this was his prototype model. Apparently, he decided to sell one in order to test it out in the field, and Maxwell bought it. As I started to zone out from all his droning on, the man suddenly grabbed my wrist.
Alright, this thing goes on your wrist right under your crest, which it binds to like all the other models.
Touching the metal to my wrist, it automatically unfurled and snapped around the joint, becoming a wristband that sat flush against my skin. It wasn't uncomfortable, surprisingly.
Now, you can only send information from your mind to the device. The device can't send things to your mind, at least not yet. It is built for it, though. So, in order to read things, you still have to manually activate the device and read them with your 2 eyeballs, yes. But you can now write messages and send them with your mind. You just have to speak them in that empty head of yours, and they'll appear on the screen. Now, I'll also be monitoring this device and its functionality to collect operating data so I can perfect it. This is what you have signed up for by buying it.
But I didn't.
Of course. I won't see nor will I care about the messages you send or receive. I know you elites care about secrecy and all that schnazzle. So just use it as normal and pretend that I'm not connected to the thing. I only need data. Data, okay?
Yes?
Good.
He nodded before standing and walking away.
Oh, one more thing.
He stopped and turned back around.
You're a summoner. Yes, you are. So you use Psycha, which is the more elusive of the 3. If things go well, I might be able to activate the function so you can also receive data in your mind, since summoners are like that. Only if it goes well. Now, I will be in contact. And please, use the aerial as much as you can. I need data.
With that, Son finally walked out, leaving me in a small daze. Everyone was staring at me, prompted me to hide my wrist and mask behind my body. Mine. I can't believe that was Son. He's filthy rich too. Patriarch Tavera laughed before going back to his business. Maxwell then walked up to me, showing his wrist, which also had one of these devices on it.
Touch.
He touched the device to mine, and a screen appeared above my wrist. Add Maxwell Alberain as a contact. Yes. I confirmed in my mind, and sure enough, he was added to my contact list. I could send and receive messages from him. We could even exchange pictures and videos. Real-time calls were also possible. It was a full-fledged telephone. Wow.
Pay me back by hurrying up and getting your next authority.
With those words, he left once again. Perhaps all those payments every week was worth it. As I admired the aerial and mask, Rayla came up to me with a smile. Extending her wrist, she tapped my aerial, exchanging contact info.
I naturally have one too. So does everyone else in the company. Get their contact info when you can.
Sure, thanks. We smiled at each other. After that, there were no more surprises as the auction continued on. There were dozens of items that got introduced and sold off after the course of several hours. Many of them sold for beyond 1,000 gold bullion. The total monetary exchange in just 5 hours was at least 80 million coin. It was a baffling number, but none of it could compare to what was to come. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the final item of the auction. This is what you all have been waiting for. It was after several hundred more people had flooded into the auction house. The auctioneer had a broad smile on his face as a small cart was rolled out. On top of it was a single box, one that I recognized. The notorious Apocryphon has spread the news far and wide. He has concocted a revolutionary item he calls the Overkill Pills. These pills are capable of increasing a person's combat power by several times, even on the verge of death. The duration of this increase depends on the user and how long their body can survive the rampaging power. However, despite the amazing effects, taking one of these pills almost certainly ensures your demise. They should only be taken in the direst of circumstances. Apocryphon has dictated one condition for the selling of this product. Not only is he selling a small batch of pills here today, but he is selling an exclusivity contract. The contract will last 2 years, and for that duration, only the buyer can receive these pills to do whatever they wish with them. Holy shit. The auction house was uproarious at the news. Even Patriarch Tavera couldn't help but curse. An exclusivity contract was huge, because not only would the buyer become the sole owner of any and all pills that were produced, but they could sell them as they wished. It was a monopoly of the product. This was much bigger than simply selling a batch of pills in an auction house. Ha! Truly a madman. I can't imagine how much money he's gonna make tonight. Plex was laughing with a drink in his hand. As for me, I was just enjoying the show. I was happy enough with my new magic phone. There are more details that Apocryphon will personally discuss with the buyer, but that will come later. Ladies and gentlemen, I officially open the bidding starting at 20,000 gold bullion. 20 million coin. I was baffled at the starting price, even more so at the subsequent shouts. There were only 3 big names that sounded out. 50,000. 80,000. 120,000. 200,000. The price quickly rose beyond anything I could comprehend. And from beside me, Plex pointed at 3 other suites that stood suspended above the stands. I'm telling you right now, the only 3 bidders for this stuff are the Polaris family, the church, and the fucking dragon military. A black market behemoth, a religious order, and the damn kingdom itself are fighting for this stuff with money we could never touch in our lives. With a single fucking pill, Apocryphon got the big names to move. Lex started laughing, half because of the absurdity, half because of how drunk he was. I leaned over toward Rayla. I know the kingdom and Polaris family are big, but the church? Yes, the church is a behemoth on equal grounds. That's because they invented the crystal purification system. And that is?
The most important technique ever created in the history of mankind?
Rayla looked down at the bidding ground with a neutral face.
The scourge is a threat that grows by the year. Monstrosities raid our borders every day, armies of mutant humanoids that seek to kill us all, and they all carry crystals, the incarnation of their power. However, their power is tainted, poisonous. Consume that power and you would turn into a monstrosity yourself. But the church created a way to purify the crystal, turning it into a magic engine that pulls in and stores a universal power called magicka. This magicka can turn into any of the three energies that knights, warlocks, and summoners can use to advance their authorities. The crystals can also be used to create enchanted items, like your new mask.
She pointed at the air mask on my lap.
Since the crystal is an engine that constantly pulls in energy, simply tapping into that flow can power objects. It revolutionized the world as we know it.
And the church has sole control over that method?
Well, they have sole control over the best method. Others have been created, but they don't have the results that the church does. So, naturally, the church is a behemoth that sits at the top of the world.
Wow. And now they're all fighting for this. 1 million! Another call sounded out. By this point, the entire auction house was silent. Only after the price reached a whopping 1 billion coin, nothing else was heard. The auctioneer, who hadn't spoken in several minutes, suddenly raised his hand. 1 million gold bullion, going once, going twice, sold! The hammer slammed down, yet unlike all the other times, no name was announced. In fact, it all seemed suspicious.
They'll probably negotiate in private. There's no way you can simply buy something this important. Plus, they're not going to dump more than that into a single man, let alone a madman like Apocryon.
Plex scoffed while taking another swig of what I could only assume was pure ethanol by the smell. And with that, the auction officially ended. We stood with Patriarch Tavera, everyone funneling out of the room. It was surprising that I actually came out of this with 2 new toys, but regardless of that, I had witnessed something rather amazing here. And to think that I had been a part of the delivery team that transported this billion-coin item. Even if everything that happened was just for show.
Chapter 13. Gala.
Ding! Ugh! Son of a bitch! My flintlock fired into a man's abdomen, one who just hit me with a metal pole. He slumped over as I kicked him away, proceeding to walk my way out. Over my face was the air mask. As Maxwell had said, it was crucial for staying healthy while in the trenches. Sure, you could go in for a day and come out fine, but over several days, the mask was a lifesaver, especially since the smell of drugs and odor was unbearable. Even more, the air that I breathed was so fresh and revitalizing that it gave me more stamina. I could run and fight for much longer, which was similarly a lifesaver. Suddenly, I felt my aerial phone go off on my wrist. I looked at it and saw Rayla's name. I answered, her voice echoing in my mind.
Hey, sweet cheeks, how's the job?
Fucking fantastic. Just got whacked in the leg with the pole.
What's the other guy look like?
A bloody mess on the floor.
Then it seems you're still fine.
I smiled as we conversed in my mind. It had only taken 2 weeks for Son to activate the mind function of the Ariel 8 prototype. This meant I could carry out calls, see messages, and send pictures, all from the comfort of my brain. But apparently, this was only because I was a summoner. Psyche, the power of the mind that summoners wielded, made all this far easier than with knights or warlocks. We kept talking as I summoned a hatchet and chopped at a man who jumped out at me with a knife.
So, is that suit working well, now that you're testing it and all?
It's definitely made a difference. I spoke while turning, flicking my arm and sending the hatchet flying. The blade buried itself into another man several meters away. Walking past the fresh corpse, the hatchet disappeared, going back to the dimension. Rayla chuckled.
I would hope so. You spent 30,000 coin on it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not taking nearly as many wounds as I used to, but for those rare occasions, it's definitely doing its part in keeping me alive. Just a few hours ago, it managed to stop a sword from cutting through. It even mitigates some of the impact.
And it looks sharp on you.
Of course. That's the most important part. I smiled as the end of the trench's territory showed itself. Making my way into the territory of the Clockwork Association, I found a certain building number and knocked.
What?
Special delivery. I yelled back to the rude voice. Soon after, the door swung open, revealing a short old lady.
Here, 2,200 coin. Now get off my doormat.
After tossing a sack of coin and snatching the package, the door was slammed shut. Compared to my recent clients, she was a saint. I turned and waved. Pleasure doing business.
Off my doormat!
Another yell came from the building, making me laugh. I then sighed. Finally done with the day.
Don't you have class?
That'll probably be tomorrow. I'm still on the verge of getting my second authority. It'll probably happen tonight.
Oh, well, hurry and train then. You know, that's another thing that's always surprised me about you.
What's that? I questioned while calling a carriage, having it take me back to the Black Spider Hotel. Rayla spoke with skepticism.
You're strong for your level. I mean, you're only Authority 1, and you can kill those well above your own power.
Well, I'd still have trouble with knights.
Yes, those tough ones seem to be your weakness, but again, you're only on your first authority.
Probably just the nature of my summons. I shrugged. I didn't know how I was supposed to explain the technology behind guns in relation to the magical powers of this world. Soon, I arrived at the hotel. All right, I'll see you tomorrow. I'm home.
Sure thing, sweet cheeks.
I ended the call with a smile. At the same time, I nodded to the keymaster. He smiled back.
Good morning, John.
Likewise, keymaster. Thank you for the hospitality.
You say that every time you come through here. Instead, I should be congratulating you in advance on a successful advancement.
Nothing gets past you.
I do my best.
He tipped his hat as I walked past. "Enjoy your rest, John." "Thank you, Keymaster." With that, I headed up to my room. Upon entry, I went and stripped my clothes in the bathroom. It was there that I turned on the bath and dumped them in the water. Just like that, my nice clothes had all the dirt and blood stripped right off them. Even the water slid off as I picked them back up. Perfectly clean in just a few minutes. That's what 30 gold bullion gets you. The suit I had spent a significant amount of my savings on was, like my first suit, black with gold embroidery. There was no worry about getting it dirty. Defensively, it could eat spells and block swords, and it could moderate its internal temperature. I decided that it would be my normal wear. Even my underwear had fancy enchantments on it. I called the temperature enchantment on it the ball chiller. Being a summoner, I didn't need to carry weapons on me like knights did. Anything else I needed to carry was small and could fit in pockets, which my trench coat had plenty of. So I always looked good, though not overly outstanding. My suit wasn't something that could catch the attention of anyone I couldn't handle in a fight. After cleaning my body up for the night, I climbed into bed. It was 6 weeks past my encounter with Apocryphon and the night at the auction house. Since then, I'd been training my authority and doing jobs. The trench jobs really did pay more. The average job paid at least 3 times more than otherwise. The costs for this extra pay, though, were at least 8 trips to the hospital. I've gotten treated for stab wounds, poison, broken bones, and a slew of other small issues. I was lucky that this magical world had fantastic medical care, as with enough money, I could recover from everything without a hitch. I even bought some recovery pills from the hospital that I could take during battles. Those kept me going, temporarily keeping my injuries from getting worse and buying me some time. I'd really ridden the line of death over these past weeks, but hopefully things would be a bit easier soon. As I laid in my bed, I glanced at a large bruise on my thigh before grabbing a small book and crystal. They were the 2 items Maxwell gave me, and I had been training with them ever since. The process to train my authority involved accumulating more power, using the crystal as an engine. You couldn't simply train your own power. That was like a battery trying to power itself. Instead, you need an external energy source. That's what the crystal was. And the book contained spell formations that allow me to direct the power in a certain way that wouldn't hurt me. Deviating from those formations hurt like hell, so quickly I learned how to use them properly. Now, I was on the verge of getting my second authority. I could feel it. In my mind, I saw the second star fill with energy over time. It was a tedious process, but now it was almost completely full. Just one more push. I mumbled to myself as I grabbed the crystal and started training. Energy moved into my body, bypassing my physical self and seeping straight into my mind. I could see the second star of 13 glisten. Then, an hour passed. It was at this time that I felt a reaction. All that power had reached a boiling point. I could suddenly feel a connection to the star. It was like a wall was breaking down. I was gaining access to something. Power beyond me was finally within reach, and I grabbed it. The star shone before all the power swirled into a vortex. It shattered the wall, and before I could react, my mind was flooded with information. The second dimension was opened, and through it, I could see more spirits. But all the energy within me was simultaneously drained, leaving me exhausted. I staved off my desire to pass out through and looked into the dimension. What I saw, I didn't know if I was happy or not. Percussion cap weapon, both pistols and rifles. The percussion cap system was far more reliable than the flintlock system. In fact, in the past several weeks, there were a few days when it rained. Those days, I outright didn't leave for work since my flintlock pistol couldn't operate when wet. Even if it could, it would be horribly unreliable, and mistakes could mean death for me. So, percussion cap weapons were definitely more reliable and easier to reload. But I had been hoping for something like a multi-chamber revolver. Well, things aren't going to be that much easier. I'll probably have to climb to Authority 3 before getting 6-shooters. Luckily, this book knows how. This book that Maxwell gave me had the formations for Authority 3, and since he said that advancing a few authorities wasn't an issue with the magisterium, I decided that I would do so. It took me 6 weeks, but 3 of those weeks were spent getting used to the spell formation. If I can figure things out faster, I might be able to advance again in a month. Well, I'll ask Maxwell tomorrow, since I can return to class now. I mumbled while closing the book and putting away the crystal. With that, I went to sleep.
Only 6 weeks, huh? Pretty fast for someone who only activated their crest a couple months ago.
Yes, but unfortunately, the new summons aren't that much stronger. They're basically more reliable weapons, maybe a bit better in terms of power, but that's it.
I see. Well, not out of the ordinary. You won't start seeing significant changes until the latter authorities. Still, there are many things to teach you until then, so sit and listen. Oh, and your bill has increased to 5 gold bullion a week.
What?
Even numbers, you know?
He shrugged, and I could only fork out 5 shiny gold coins. They fell from my card into his hand, which he immediately tossed into his own card, which was of the platinum level. After that, I got to listen to a long lecture that only stopped after the sun had risen. When it was over, I dragged myself out, though not before giving Maxwell a reminder. By the way, the auction is coming up again soon.
Of course. Just focus on training your next authority. Oh, and did you get a suit from that man I told you to visit?
Yes, I'm wearing it right now. It was Maxwell who referred me to a tailor who made these special suits, telling me to buy one if I wanted to survive. In the end, I spent 30 gold bullion on the one Rayla and I had spoken about the day before.
Very well. Oh, take this crystal and hand me back the other one next time. Use the new one for training. It's more powerful.
He tossed me a white crystal, one that was identical to the previous, only bigger. With that, I finally left for the day. My next few weeks were filled with training and working. The reason Maxwell wanted me to face adversity in the trenches was because utilizing my spirits naturally trained me as a summoner, especially since I had cold summons. And I had learned a lot through daily battles. The process of charming to form a communion became far smoother than at first. I also learned a special aspect of the Call of the Fallen Angel that had saved my neck several times. Spirits weren't limited to their summoned forms. Basically, I could pump up my psyche into these spirits, making them stronger. This allowed my guns to hit harder at the expense of my energy. When faced with knights who had atrociously strong and resilient bodies, normal bullets didn't cut it. Instead, I spent chunks of my energy empowering the spirit and giving it stronger shots that could kill those knights. And it was this ability that continued to secure my life in the following weeks. Soon, my third auction came around. It marked the 6th month of the year, which meant it was the second quarterly auction. The major auction that was graced by Vatsy's gala. The Black Spider Market was festive even before the auction began. The anticipation was high, and I myself was raking in the big bucks. I was paired with Rayla again as we ran jobs for the auction. Thankfully, nothing like the encounter with Apocryphon happened again, though that didn't mean it wasn't dangerous. We were attacked several times, even outside the black markets. It was like these thieves could smell how valuable our cargo was because they always seemed to come out of nowhere. Thankfully, Rayla was powerful. Her warlock spells could take people out faster than my pistols could. We still got a few injuries, though, ending up in the hospital a couple times. But it was all worth it. Precisely, it was worth the 28,000 gold profit. These quarterly auctions were big, and we were privileged enough to attend them. When the day came, I picked out my formal suit and met the company at the auction house. Inside, there were dancers on a stage and an entire orchestra that was playing swing music. The entire place was filled with the aroma of alcohol, perfume, and delicious food. It was a massive party, all hosted by the big wig Vatsy.
Throw on your masks, everyone, and have fun!
Of course, another symbol of the gala was the Masquerade. Everyone received a mask, one that matched our attire. After putting them on, a few of the guys dispersed, Plex included. Rayla and I, on the other hand, linked arms and wandered around the place. Occasionally, we took some snacks, and most of the time we were talking about whatever came to mind. Spending some time at the bar, she would pick out some suitable females that she'd tried to get me to talk to. All of them were rather gorgeous. Not even the masks could conceal their beauty. But, as always, I refused, and in the end she invited me for a dance. Unfortunately, while I knew how to dance, I didn't know anything from this world, so she was the one who had to lead. I quickly picked up on what seemed to be a combination of square dancing and the tango. It was complex but rhythmic, and after feeling each other for a while, we matched our tempo. Of course, I couldn't help but be tripped up a few times, but everything between us was fun, so we just laughed and kept going. Then, I took the lead and taught her some stuff that I knew. Some simplified tango was fun as I led her around the floor. She was agile as she followed my feet, our bodies almost pasted together while we moved. I knew it wasn't just me as the heat grew. Eventually, our smiles turned somber, our gazes locked into each other's, our eyes sharp, almost like we were mad at each other. And then, the music slowed. We came to a stop, her chest pressed against mine, and our hot breaths brushing against the other's face. And just when it seemed like something would happen, I heard the aerial ring in my mind. It was a call from Libidus. It drew my attention, and as soon as my eyes were diverted, Rayla took a breath and backed off. Sorry, Libidus is calling me.
No, it's fine. I need a drink anyway.
She smiled as we walked off the dance floor. I made my way to a bar while Rayla excused herself. I met with Libidus, who grabbed me and pulled me to the side. Hey, there's something you should know. What? I asked weirdly while grabbing some random wine off a tray. Libidus seemed serious as he spoke. It's about Rayla. I need you to trust me and avoid trying anything with her. What do you mean? Please, I saw you two down there. For the past month, you two have gotten really close. And I don't want that to change, since she's been a lot happier since you've come around. But please, don't get seriously romantic. For her sake. Why? I got curious. Being honest with myself, I've come to really like Rayla. She was smart, mature, had a great sense of humor, and was beautiful. I couldn't say I hadn't thought of pursuing anything. But Libidus was making me morbidly curious. He shook his head with a sigh. I'm not sure I should tell you. It's her business. Hey, let's not play these games. Tell me or I'll go ask her about it myself, because I like her too much to beat around such an important detail. Fine. He gave in, but before he spoke, he grabbed a cup and downed all its contents. After a cough, he looked around before turning his voice low. Look, she's been married before. It wasn't long before she joined the military that she found her husband. Both of them were warlocks, so they joined together, but he didn't make it out. He spoke with lingering sorrow. She's been depressed for years since they had been trying for a child. Still, probably hasn't gotten over it. But when you two met, she's been all bright and happy. You're a good man, John, and normally I'd say you two would be good together, but I don't think she's in the position to get involved romantically. I don't know if she'll ever be. They seriously loved each other. I mean, she almost killed herself over it. The scourge took her man in the worst way possible. Plus, you're quite a bit younger than her. It's just the facts don't mesh, and I don't want things to be ruined between you two because of that conflict. I was silent, processing these shocking revelations. Libidus sighed while he glanced at me, downing another cup. I'm sorry, John, but please trust me on this. You two can get as chummy as you want, but keep it as friends. If you try to take it that one step further, I don't see it ending well for either of you. It'll just be an amazing friendship brought to an unnecessary halt. Thank you for telling me. I responded dully, grabbing an entire bottle of alcohol off a butler's tray and taking a swig. I pinched my temples. I'll think about it. Well, no need to do it sober, but keep things up like this and you'll probably have to make the decision tonight. Nope, she's coming. Libidus smiled and waved while Rayla walked over. With my back facing her, I clenched my jaw before taking another drink and turning around. Hey, care to join us? I offered with a wide smile, waving the bottle around in front of her face. She smirked and took it, taking a swig with a scrunched face.
Bleh, that's strong. At least give me something tasty.
Of course. Let's head to the Tavera suite and drink there, though. Like that, the three of us got ourselves comfortable in the first-class seating that was armed with a private bar. And so, the quarterly auction was kicked off, filled with happiness and hidden sorrows.
Chapter 14. Short. God, you're so drunk.
Oh, definitely not. I'm an American. I can hold my liquor.
Yes, I know. It's the only reason you haven't passed out yet. I mean, 5 bottles.
Rayla chuckled wryly as she practically carried John. Recalling the night, although it seemed like he just wanted to let a little loose, she felt something was off. It was when he was left alone. It only took a glance to see the hollow stare. And it was only when she moved into his line of sight that he would perk back up and drink a bit more. He downed hard liquor like water, impressing even the knights of the Tavera family. And for some reason, he made it known that he was what they called an American. That's what everyone was calling him by the end of the night. Now, here he was, basically slung over her shoulder as she dragged him back to her house. And there was one other thing that concerned her. On their way out of the Black Spider Market, she passed by the Keymaster. The two were acquainted. It was his words that made her think. "You have something good, Rayla Nolovich." "Sorry?" His comment had made her heart constrict. Nolovich. That was her late husband's surname. After he died, she no longer kept it since she couldn't carry that family name without him. So that name triggered deep memories that she didn't want to remember. She glanced at his oddly gentle face. A true friendship is an amazing thing, but still nothing more. She didn't respond to that, but she still thought about it deeply as she unlocked the door to her apartment. Oh, am I actually in a girl's house?
Are you 12? Here, just lay on the couch.
I'm banished to the couch.
She rolled her eyes as John sighed, lowering him onto the cushions. Then she sat on the armrest by his head. He was already dozing off. When he shifted, she could see him glance at her through half-closed eyes. She reached down, brushing back some of his hair. The two were quiet, simply staring at each other. There were so many things that both of them wanted to say, but there was much more that was better left unsaid. Both of them had straightforward personalities, but in this moment, their desire to carefully tread an invisible line took hold. What they wanted and what they knew they should do conflicted. In the end, Rayla spoke first. "Why didn't you go talk to those girls?" It seemed like a joking question, but it made John's mind spin. He could say he didn't talk to them because he'd rather be with her. It would give him exactly what he wanted, which was to take that step forward. But it wouldn't align with what he wanted for Rayla, which was to maintain their friendship. Rayla didn't know that Libidus told John about her late husband. She didn't know that he had been thinking for hours about what was best for both of them. She surely had the same conflict in her mind. Was she ready to get into a serious relationship? Would she mess it up because of her past? And before all that, did she want to chain John to herself? Or did she want him to be with someone that didn't have all the baggage she did? And her question meant one thing. She was leaving the decision to him. If he wanted it, then she would do it. If he didn't...
Maybe.
John mumbled lightly, stopping for a moment as he relaxed his tightening throat.
I think I was just nervous.
Nervous?
Yeah, indecisive. Afraid. I can't say I'm the smoothest talker. Maybe I would mess things up.
She was silent, but after a while, John asked,
Did you want me to talk to them?
Well, her voice was unusually soft, yet filled with emotion that threatened to burst. Taking a deep breath, she slipped off the arm of the chair and kneeled on the floor in front of the couch. Her head leaned on the cushion. She didn't respond for close to a minute, and when she finally lifted her head, she had a small, sorrowful smile. I was just trying to get you a girlfriend. A lot of those chicks come from rich families. They would be good picks.
That's true. Not that I care about that.
Yeah. Promise me something. She lifted her head and leaned forward. I need this, but promise me this will never happen again. She said that, and after moving forward, she locked her lips with his. Chapter 15. Advance.
I wasn't sure when I woke up, but I quickly realized that I wasn't the first. And it took a few seconds, but when I saw the messy sheets of the bed and started recalling the night before, I fucked up. I had done just about everything I told myself not to, if not more. Not only that, I'd finished inside of her. Shit, I was way too drunk. I felt waves of regret. This seriously wasn't good for either of us. And I wasn't thinking I'd become a father just after a couple of months, after coming to an entirely new world. Well, I'd own up to it like a man if I had to. Still, I spent close to half an hour wallowing in shame before finally pulling myself up. I knew she had a shower since that was one of our stops the night before. So, walking into the bathroom connected to her bedroom, I threw it on and washed up. As for the hangover, I barely had a headache. All the alcohol was high quality, combined with my vigorous body. I guess I had avoided a large part of the hurt. When I rinsed and came back out, I found my clothes folded on the bed that had been remade. Feeling another wave of shame, I threw on my pants and shirt while slinging my coat over my shoulder. It looked less like a walk of shame that way. Then I steeled myself as I left the bedroom.
Son, pleased to meet you. This is a prototype model, okay? Prototype. That means it's not perfect and still needs to be adjusted to suit you until I can create a standardized model. Now, I can't spill all the details, but this thing can basically connect to your mind, to some extent at least. This new feature is limited for now until I work out the kinks, but nonetheless still extremely useful. Also, this thing can work independently, regardless of if there are repeater nodes around you. I believe the maximum pulse transmission is 40 miles in all directions, and standard transmission is 10 miles in all directions. Trust me, far more capable than whatever else those dogs at Hero Aerial Works are cooking up.
The man, Son, went on a spiel about all the different things that this device could do. In short, it was a phone. This world had phones, apparently, although the ones cheap enough for the common man were limited in function. Still, they provided revolutionary communication abilities. And this man, Son, was the owner of Son Industries. He created these phones, and this was his prototype model. Apparently, he decided to sell one in order to test it out in the field, and Maxwell bought it. As I started to zone out from all his droning on, The man suddenly grabbed my wrist.
Alright, this thing goes on your wrist right under your crest, which it binds to like all the other models.
Touching the metal to my wrist, it automatically unfurled and snapped around the joint, becoming a wristband that sat flush against my skin. It wasn't uncomfortable, surprisingly.
Now, you can only send information from your mind to the device. The device can't send things to your mind, at least not yet. It is built for it, though. So, in order to read things, you still have to manually activate the device and read them with your 2 eyeballs, yes. But you can now write messages and send them with your mind. You just have to speak them in that empty head of yours, and they'll appear on the screen. Now, I'll also be monitoring this device and its functionality to collect operating data so I can perfect it. This is what you have signed up for by buying it.
But I didn't.
Of course. I won't see nor will I care about the messages you send or receive. I know you elites care about secrecy and all that schnazzle. So just use it as normal and pretend that I'm not connected to the thing. I only need data. Data, okay?
Yes?
Good.
He nodded before standing and walking away.
Oh, one more thing.
He stopped and turned back around.
You're a summoner. Yes, you are. So you use Psycha, which is the more elusive of the 3. If things go well, I might be able to activate the function so you can also receive data in your mind, since summoners are like that. Only if it goes well. Now, I will be in contact. And please, use the aerial as much as you can. I need data.
With that, Son finally walked out, leaving me in a small daze. Everyone was staring at me, prompted me to hide my wrist and mask behind my body. Mine. I can't believe that was Son. He's filthy rich too. Patriarch Tavera laughed before going back to his business. Maxwell then walked up to me, showing his wrist, which also had one of these devices on it.
Touch.
He touched the device to mine, and a screen appeared above my wrist. Add Maxwell Alberain as a contact. Yes. I confirmed in my mind, and sure enough, he was added to my contact list. I could send and receive messages from him. We could even exchange pictures and videos. Real-time calls were also possible. It was a full-fledged telephone. Wow.
Pay me back by hurrying up and getting your next authority.
With those words, he left once again. Perhaps all those payments every week was worth it. As I admired the aerial and mask, Rayla came up to me with a smile. Extending her wrist, she tapped my aerial, exchanging contact info.
I naturally have one too. So does everyone else in the company. Get their contact info when you can.
Sure. Thanks. We smiled at each other. After that, there were no more surprises as the auction continued on. There were dozens of items that got introduced and sold off after the course of several hours. Many of them sold for beyond 1,000 gold bullion. The total monetary exchange in just 5 hours was at least 80 million coin. It was a baffling number, but none of it could compare to what was to come. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the final item of the auction. This is what you all have been waiting for. It was after several hundred more people had flooded into the auction house.
The auctioneer had a broad smile on his face as a small cart was rolled out. On top of it was a single box, one that I recognized. The notorious Apocryphon has spread the news far and wide. He has concocted a revolutionary item he calls the Overkill Pills. These pills are capable of increasing a person's combat power by several times, even on the verge of death. The duration of this increase depends on the user and how long their body can survive the rampaging power. However, despite the amazing effects, taking one of these pills almost certainly ensures your demise. They should only be taken in the direst of circumstances. Apocryphon has dictated one condition for the selling of this product. Not only is he selling a small batch of pills here today, but he is selling an exclusivity contract. The contract will last 2 years, and for that duration, only the buyer can receive these pills to do whatever they wish with them. Holy shit. The auction house was uproarious at the news. Even Patriarch Tavera couldn't help but curse. An exclusivity contract was huge, because not only would the buyer become the sole owner of any and all pills that were produced, but they could sell them as they wished. It was a monopoly of the product. This was much bigger than simply selling a batch of pills in an auction house. Ha! Truly a madman. I can't imagine how much money he's gonna make tonight. Plex was laughing with the drink in his hand. As for me, I was just enjoying the show. I was happy enough with my new magic phone. There are more details that Apocryphon will personally discuss with the buyer, but that will come later. Ladies and gentlemen, I officially open the bidding starting at 20,000 gold bullion. 20 million coin. I was baffled at the starting price, even more so at the subsequent shouts. There were only 3 big names that sounded out. 50,000. 80,000. 120,000. 200,000. The price quickly rose beyond anything I could comprehend. And from beside me, Plex pointed at 3 other suites that stood suspended above the stands. I'm telling you right now, the only 3 bidders for this stuff are the Polaris family, the church, and the fucking dragon military. A black market behemoth, a religious order, and the damn kingdom itself are fighting for this stuff with money we could never touch in our lives. With a single fucking pill, Apocryphon got the big names to move. Lex started laughing, half because of the absurdity, half because of how drunk he was. I leaned over toward Rayla. I know the kingdom and Polaris family are big, but the church? When you get to that level, you start to realize that no amount of power you attain is truly massive. Things only reach further and further extremes the higher you climb. The you as an authority 2 might see an authority 8 or 9 as some kind of god, but as an authority 8, I've met authority 10s that seem like gods, and those above them, I couldn't fathom their power, let alone try to reach it. She sighed, her words making me realize just how insane those levels were. Besides, I'm not even a good authority 8. A good authority 7 could match me just fine. Please, you're amazing as is. Plus, the higher you go, the more problematic things get. Would you really want to live that kind of life? No, I wouldn't.
So then you're golden.
Thanks. Now go train. I expect to see some new summons tomorrow since you've been yapping about how amazing they're going to be.
Right. I smiled, and after some goodbyes, we hung up. Picking up the book, I started forming the spell that I had already memorized. And with the crystal, I used its energy to drive the spell and expand my power. Like last time, I was close to unlocking the third star. It took a lot more energy than last time, at least several times more. And yet, I'd gotten this far much faster than prior. It was because I had finally gotten used to forming these complicated spells, and without that barrier, most of my time was spent training. In that sense, it had actually taken longer to train, being 4 weeks of accumulation instead of 3. Regardless, everything was coming to a head. These feelings were almost identical to last time. The energy reached a tipping point, and then the barrier of the star was broken through. With a massive drain in energy, the third dimension was opened. I slumped in my bed, my mind exhausted with the outpour. But keeping myself awake, I observed what few spirits I could see in the dimension, and the sight caused me to smile. 6-shooter revolvers, lever-action rifles, break-action shotguns. Old-school weapons, no doubt. It was the kind of stuff you would see in depictions of the Wild West. There weren't semi-automatic pistols or rifles, not even pump-action shotguns. But these weapons meant a vast jump in survivability for me. Also, with my increased pool of psyche, I could empower my spirits more, meaning more overall killing power. With that, I passed out in glee. I was really looking forward to the future. Yeehaw, motherfucker! Boom! I let out a shotgun blast toward the man in front of me. His body went unceremoniously flying. His chest turned into paste. I wiped some blood splatter off my face, turning toward the others. See that, assholes? I've got an upgrade. The American is stronger.
Shit! Just give me that damn coin!
From a distance, a bold but inexperienced warlock prepared a couple spells. But with the flick of my wrist, the shotgun was put away and a rifle took its place. Firing a 30-30 cartridge, this wooden-bodied beauty was a monster that had already made my life easier in several ways. Particularly in this way. Boom! Another explosion shook everyone's ears, even mine. And across the way, the bold warlock looked down to find a new hole in his chest. He'd even put up some kind of magical barrier, but it had done absolutely nothing to stop the bullet. I had already become notorious in the trenches, so much so that not many came to bother me anymore. The only ones who came were those in groups, and everyone knew that when I aimed with my boomstick, the person on the other end of it would get hurt. So they used their brains and started preparing barriers. Before, they might have had a chance to mitigate some of the damage, but with these new weapons, I was about to enter a whole new level of notoriety. I could see everyone look at me like I was a freak as I breathed in the wonderful scent of gunpowder smoking out of the barrel end. Anyone else? I've got enough lead for you all. Fuck! They grit their teeth, and ultimately, they ran away. I smirked and waltzed my way out, but before long, there was someone who stepped in my path. He snarled at me.
Remember me, American?
Didn't I run away from you one time? I scratched my head while looking at the short man who appeared. He had no shirt, showing off his bulky muscles, and a nasty scar in his abdomen. I put that scar there with my flintlock while I was injured and running away. Only recognized him since he was really short. I called him a gremlin no few number of times. What, you back for revenge, fucking gremlin?
Call me that one more time.
He grit his teeth as his muscles bulged in rage. I smiled. Just get your stubby feet over here, gremlin. Ah! With a bellow, the little man came charging at me. At the same time, I raised the rifle. I let out 4 shots. One hit his leg, one hit an arm, and the other 2 landed somewhere in that pile of abs. But he only stumbled in surprise before continuing. Is that all you got? You summoners are trash. Frowning, I waved my hand, grabbing the shotgun and throwing in 2 new shells with skillful hands. In that time, he closed the distance, even with me backpedaling. Eat this slug. Boom! This time, he couldn't be so arrogant. Though, I would give him a bit of internal praise. Instead of getting his head outright blown off, he only lost an arm. Yeah! He dropped while clutching his empty shoulder pocket. But perhaps riding the wave of shock, he quickly stumbled back up and moved to take me down. You're dead! 2 shells, dumbass. And that was it. I put a hole in his chest, causing him to freeze. He stood there for a few seconds before I pushed with my barrel, knocking him to the floor. I smiled as blood soaked the dirt ground beneath him. I've told everyone to just leave me alone. Besides, it's not like I got my gold just sitting in my pockets. Now look at you. Dead. Was it worth it, gremlin? I stepped over his corpse and continued walking. When I finally got out of the trenches, I walked around before finding a specific bar. It was there that I saw Rayla standing outside, who'd noticed me and waved. Hey, sweet cheeks, you're covered in blood. And this time, none of it's mine. I even killed that gremlin from some time ago. Yes, those weapons of yours are insane. You're also more aggressive than usual. She laughed while pulling out a handkerchief, wiping my face down. Then she smirked. You forgot to wear your air mask. No wonder you're enjoying yourself so much. Oh, crap. I suddenly remembered that. Normally, I had it on while in the trenches, but I forgot it today. I was cleaning it yesterday. I think I forgot it in my bathroom. Of course you did. Well, getting high for just one day is fine. There. She finished cleaning and pat my cheek. Now, let's get a drink. Libidus and the others are already inside. Sure. We smiled and went inside, meeting the others and having a small post-work party. Chapter 16. Party. Maxwell looked me over, nodding in approval.
Third Authority only a few months after starting training. Your talent is good then. You should have no issues in the magisterium.
Well, I only have one concern. I asked. My summons, my guns, are way too lethal. I mean, I can't just dial down their power. That's not how they work. So if I ever have to fight anyone, like in tournaments or whatever...
I wouldn't worry too much about that. A majority of your battles in the magisterium are going to be against the scourge or in artificial hunting grounds. The times you will turn your weapons against a fellow magus are few, and even then, you may be exempt due to the nature of your power. After all, you aren't the first to have this problem of, excessive lethality.
Oh, good. So, other than fighting, what exactly do we do there? The time to enter the magisterium was coming. I had one more month. The past 4 months had been filled with constant fighting and working. I had learned more than I ever expected since arriving, and Maxwell had helped raise me to the 3rd authority. I was a whole new man who had been reforged through the fires of those dastardly trenches, or I should say the smoke. You could get high just by breathing the air of that place. Learned that the fun way. Anyway, going from all this to a school wasn't a change in pace that I was quite prepared for. But then again, I didn't think I would be stopping my work. I still wanted to make money despite having tons in my savings, even if only occasionally. Maxwell sat back in his chair while letting out a breath.
Normally, there are 3 things you do with the magisterium. You learn their summoner calls, cultivate your authority, and fight. But since you're learning my call, you won't be learning theirs. So you'll be cultivating using the formations they give you and learning to fight against the scourge. Remember that the sole purpose of the magisterium is to develop elite soldiers that can fight the scourge. Therefore, you'll be fighting alongside the military rather often, especially since you'll be jumping straight into the higher ranks of the school.
All right. And how long should I expect to be there?
Depends on how fast you climb to Authority 5. It's at about that level that they tend to transition you to the military, unless you show enough talent to climb higher in a short amount of time. Even in that case, though, they would still have you hunting as part of a more specialized units. Also, I should warn you of something.
Maxwell's face turned a little ponderous.
By going to the magisterium, you're signing yourself away to the kingdom. In exchange for the cultivation spell formations of higher levels, you are required to fight for them or contribute something to the cause. If you were a warlock, then you could study to become an enchanter, but you aren't, so you're destined to join the military should you choose this path. Otherwise, you refrain from entering and go your own way, but then you won't be able to advance anymore. Unless you find an organization that would give you the summoner spell formations for higher authorities.
So, if I want to get stronger, I have to work for somebody.
Nothing is ever free, especially in our line of work. The cost of those white crystals are high, multiplying with each higher level, and the cultivation formations even more so, though there is one way that you can avoid the military and still go to the magisterium.
What's that?
If you get recruited by the church.
He eyed me curiously.
Are you a believer, John?
In?
The church that believes in Jesus Christ, the Savior and Son of God, headed by the Pope, and the greatest nemesis of the demonic plague that is the scourge.
Oh, well, I didn't really know about the scourge part, but yes, I'm a Christian. I'm American, after all. Though, if I'm being specific, my parents raised me Catholic. I spoke, but inwardly. I was surprised. I didn't realize they would have Christianity here. It seemed to be exactly what I knew it as on Earth. Getting curious, I asked, are there any other religions?
Of course. The only significant religion is Terravia, comprised of those who believe in gods that represent the different aspects of nature. You could also say they worship magic in a sense. Those people have primarily come from the pillars of creation.
What's that?
The only other kingdom that has been able to stand and survive against the scourge, other than the kingdom of Dragon's Tongue. They are human, but vastly different from us in terms of magic. And because we are separated by vast distance, very little occurs between us. Most people don't even know they exist, believing that our kingdom is the last bastion of humanity in this world.
Oh. I nodded. And are there any denominations of the church?
Obviously, but they're inconsequential. They've tried and failed to make reforms, and very little actually give them the time of day. So they've resorted to forming underground cults that you'll never hear of.
Interesting.
Anyway, since you are a believer and have no affiliations or background to speak of, then you might have a chance of getting recruited. Unlike other cold summoners, I see great potential in your weapons. Truly, they are lethal, and against the scourge, that means everything. I have no doubt that you will rise to great heights, but I only hope that you are capable of keeping yourself safe. Remember that defense is your greatest weakness.
Yeah, I'm a glass cannon.
Perfect analogy.
He smirked at me. Over time, I'd begun to feel the great deficiency that was my defense. My offense was amazing, but if I really got hit by a strong attack, I was done for. At some point, I would no longer be able to kill my opponents before they hurt me, and that would be the day I either found another solution or died. I should buy armor.
Yes, that would be a good investment, especially for you. But take some time to find what kind of armor you like. Perhaps when you begin to fight against the scourge, you'll know what type of armor will benefit you best.
Alright, now what should I do until I enter?
Work on the call.
Maxwell nodded.
Yes, extensive study will help you best. I should have you memorize the more complex spells and formations for the higher authorities.
Oh, jeez. I let out a sigh. It was going to be a long month. A few more weeks passed. My savings climbed by the day, and although I wasn't rich like the others in the company, I still had a sizable amount of money lying around. Only a week before I entered the magisterium, I was actually notified by the Polaris Bank to come in. It was there that I met the clerk, and he gave me some good news.
Congratulations, John. Because you have surpassed 500,000 coins stored with us, we have upgraded your tier in accordance with your company's platinum level. You now have access to 2 new perks, along with no longer needing to pay a fee for continual storage.
The clerk handed me a platinum card, taking my gold one away. The platinum one had fancy designs on it, looking far more luxurious than the gold one.
First, the platinum tier allows you to take out loans with 0% interest. Depending on the amount, you are assigned a date to pay back the loans, usually amounting to a few years. Secondly, you can now insert normal items other than coin into the card in order to store it in our secure warehouse. Eligible items include jewels, weapons, small containers, and anything else that can fit within the expanded card. Go ahead and try pulling the card apart.
Okay. Getting excited, I grabbed the two edges of the card and pulled. The entire thing expanded, metal unfolding as if generating new material from nowhere. It ended up as a large box that you could easily drop many things into, so long as they weren't excessively bulky. The only drawback to this storage method is that the card only works within the bounds of the capital city. If you ever leave, be sure to retrieve anything you might need beforehand. And if you don't have one already, I suggest acquiring a spatial sack in order to transport items on your person, no matter where you go. What's that, and where can I find one? I asked curiously. I was about to be entering the magisterium, and we would no doubt be leaving the city occasionally. This spatial sack sounded like it could help me.
A spatial sack is a small bag that can contain items beyond its normal volume, but because of their utility, they are normally very expensive. If you were to spend the entirety of your savings, you would be able to buy a medium-grade sack.
Damn. Well, I'll think about it. Thanks for the info and the card.
Of course. As a new Platinum client under a Platinum company, you are no longer required to pay a percentage fee for our services, as your company pays a universal rate for all its members.
Nice. I was smiling as the clerk finished with everything he had to say. Afterward, I left the bank and called Rayla.
Hey, sweet cheeks.
Hey, I was wondering if I should buy a spatial sack.
You could, but honestly, it's not totally necessary for you.
Her voice turned explanatory.
With all your weapons being summons and your coin being taken care of by the card, the only loose items you carry on you are that mask and recovery pills. But if you really want it, I suggest getting one of the lower-end sacks. They hold enough space to contain a bunch of small items, which is perfect for you. That is, if you want to spend around 50 gold bullion for one.
Maybe. We'll see. I'm just thinking if I'll need something like that for the magisterium.
That's right. You're entering soon.
She went quiet for a moment.
Just think on it for a while. Oh, and by the way, Plex told me to tell you to keep your schedule clear about 3 days before your official entrance. That means no work.
All right. Care to tell me what he's planning?
But then it wouldn't be much of a surprise.
Tell me.
Nope, my lips are sealed, pretty boy. You just sit back and wait for me to send you the location.
She spoke haughtily before hanging up. I was left rolling my eyes with a smile. From then on, I didn't see Rayla or the others. It seemed like they were avoiding me. And so, a few more days passed, coming upon the day of my surprise. Since I didn't have anything to do, I slept in and woke up leisurely. I also went to a restaurant for breakfast, even though the sun had already set. After that, I hung around for a few hours, spending some time probing my third star dimension for any spirits that might be worth communing with. And finally, once 2 a.m. hit, I got a message. Head to the Caviar Restaurant. It was from Rayla, and the name surprised me a bit. This restaurant was located within the Black Spider Market, and it was the highest-end restaurant I knew of. It was never particularly busy, but I knew the reason for that was the expense. Dressing somewhat nicely, I finally left my room and headed into the market. Seeing the market slightly busy reminded me that there was another upcoming auction. Unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to work it since I would be busy entering the magisterium. Because of that, Rayla would either take the auction off or work in a trio with some of the others. It didn't take me long to make it to the restaurant. It was a fancy building with formally dressed attendants, an entire orchestra playing within, and magical lights that set a wonderful mood. I walked in and met a host who smiled courteously.
"Hello, sir. Do you have a reservation?"
I think so. My name is John.
"Ah, I was told you'd be coming. Please head to the 16th floor."
Thanks. Being guided to an elevator, an attendant pressed the button for me. I got a little anxious as we rose, wondering what they had planned. I had naturally guessed that it had something to do with my entrance, so I wondered if it was just a congratulatory party. We made it to the floor and the door opened. But the room I was let out on was totally dark. Not even the light from the elevator could illuminate the darkness, as if it was artificial. Stepping out, the elevator doors closed, leaving me in pitch darkness. My hand twitched a bit, my mind subconsciously communing with my double-barrel shotgun. Then, the lights came on, revealing my friends of the company. Surprise! Rainbow lights scattered in the air as everyone jumped with a cheer. It was funny, though, because there were only 4 of them, and 3 were men. Their voices were all deep, making it seem dull. I laughed with a pretend scare. "Ah, I'm so scared."
"As if. Get over here."
Rayla rolled her eyes and walked over, giving me a hug. After that, I greeted the other guys. Libidus handed me a drink, and I shook Tovex's hand. Plex announced, "Congratulations, John. You're finally getting into the magisterium. Libidus and Rayla had decided to throw you a party, and with you being my apprentice, I naturally agreed." "Only after making us foot the bill."
"I still agreed."
Plex shot back at Libidus, making Rayla laugh.
"Not important. The point is, tonight we're going to have fun. A company party. And so long as you're not totally drunk in an hour or two, we've got presents to give to you." "Yes, some expensive congratulatory presents." "Shut up. You're rich."
Rayla shot back at Plex. Smiling, I raised the glass of wine that Libidus handed me. "Well, thanks, everyone. Cheers."
"Cheers!"
We all tipped back our drinks. Then, a night of festivities was kicked off. Chapter 17. Gifts.
"Hey, I remember when this kid was new."
"Shut up."
"He was so cocky. I mean, he said he'd take me down with him if he had a hard time with the job."
Oh, God. I covered my face as Rayla laughed her ass off. After an hour or so, we were all tipsy from the high-quality drinks this restaurant served. The food we ordered was also fantastically high class. I stuffed my face with some cubes of meat to distract from the embarrassing memories. Libidus nodded and spoke while chewing. "Yeah, But in his defense, his summons are pretty crazy. 5 months later, and he was able to survive even in the trenches. He can kill people far above his level.
Well, no thanks to Maxwell. How you managed to land that man as a teacher is beyond me.
Plex was flabbergasted while tilting back another drink. I raised my glass to Libidus. Thanks, man. Still stupid for trying to challenge Plex, though. Then I take back my thanks. Libidus laughed as I stuck up my middle finger. At that moment, Rayla suddenly clapped.
Oh, we still need to do presents.
Presents! I cheered as Rayla stood and went to a corner of the room. There she grabbed a couple boxes. One was big and one was small.
Open the big one first.
Libidus smiled as Rayla handed the big box to me. I grabbed it from her, feeling a bit of weight. This is from all of us and Maxwell. Maxwell?
Yes, I'm pretty sure he pitched in the most of us all.
Not that he isn't wiping his ass with gold paper. Plex chuckled as I opened the box. Inside, I could see a piece of clothing, but not just any ordinary clothing. I took out the item, unfurling it and finding that it was a coat, not unlike the one I had bought a while ago. Except, although it was a black long coat, it had purple lines branching from the spine outward toward the edges. They occasionally pulsed, like veins connected to a beating heart.
It's a coat made from the pelt of a hybrid mind beast. These hybrids are basically a combination of two branches of magi. This one is a summoner and a knight. They're rare, and even harder to kill. Not only that, but this pelt is made from the most expensive part of their body, the spinal column. Basically, it's fucking expensive, and if you die while wearing that, you'll be the biggest joke of the kingdom.
Plex summed up, causing Rayla to kick his leg.
Don't listen to him. We know that your weakness is defense, so this should make up for a good portion of that. It goes down to your knees, so it even protects most of your legs. Just be careful of what it doesn't protect, like your head and feet. Also, although the coat won't break, the impact can still hurt you. This won't make you invincible. It even has some utility when activated that can help you in battles.
Of course, this is more than enough. Thank you, everyone. I'll take care of it.
We gotta to take care of you, so keep yourself safe.
Libidus gave me a warm smile. After that, Rayla handed me the small box. She hastened me to open it. Oh, it's this. I was surprised as I pulled out a bracelet. It was a spatial sack. I'd gone and looked for some myself since I was thinking about buying one and knew what they looked like. In fact, the Polaris Bank sold a line of them. This seemed to be one of those.
This is a Polaris brand spatial sack. It doesn't have a lot of room, no more than a chest full of worth, but we mainly chose this one for its functionality. With it, you can directly will items into your hand. Its ease of use is worth much more than the potential sheer space. The bracelet also locks to your arm, so it won't be stolen unless someone cuts it off you.
That's cool. Thank you, guys. I smiled while slipping it onto my right wrist, same place that my aerial was. The bracelet went a bit higher up the forearm before clamping down comfortably. After that, it seemed to scan my crest before activating with a pulse of blue light.
Then I suddenly became aware of the space inside the bracelet. It really was about a chest-sized area, about 4 cubic feet big. So while it couldn't be used to store any significant amount of supplies, it was enough for any small items I needed. For instance, instead of needing to take a recovery pill out of a container within my pocket, I could just make one appear in my hand and pop it into my mouth. With this, I wouldn't need to carry anything on my person, so nothing would get stolen or lost. These 2 gifts that I was given were valuable, especially the coat. I couldn't imagine how much was spent on it, if not just Maxwell, but everyone here pitched in for it. It was a big gift, making me feel really grateful. These were the first friends I had in this world. After leaving behind everything I knew, I suppose that I had been ignoring the homesickness and focusing on making my way here. But now, I wasn't so homesick. Thank you guys. Really. Getting slightly emotional, I got up and went around hugging everyone. Plex was last, and as I stood in front of him, he looked up at me weirdly. You're gonna make me get up? Come on. An apprentice can thank his master with a hug, no? Besides, you gave me the... fuck. You're gonna make me get up?
Come on. An apprentice can thank his master with a hug, no? Besides, you gave me this job when I needed it most. Despite everything, I'm still thankful for all you've done for me.
Fine. I can have a heart.
Standing up, the man accepted the hug with a pat on the back. After that, the party went on for a while longer before ending a bit before the sun came up. When everyone finally decided to go, it was Libidus who pulled something out of his jacket. Hey, let's all take a picture. With what? This thing I got. The guy who sold it said it would make physical copies. He fumbled around with a magical device that looked pretty similar to my bank card. As he was still a bit drunk, he was less coordinated. But he got it set up and waved everyone over with a smile. We all bundled together, looking into the card with smiles. Wait, what about Tovex?
He's passed out.
Dumbass. Whatever. Smile. Raising it above us, Libidus activated the device with magic. It flashed and he brought it down. After that, it divided into 5 cards. One for everybody, as a memory. This is cool. I smiled at the flexible card that now had a picture of the 4 of us. Libidus with a goofy grin, Rayla putting up 2 fingers, Plex barely keeping himself standing with a drunken face, Tovex in the back, on the ground, and with his ass in the air. I put the picture into my bracelet, feeling fuzzy on the inside. It reminded me of home. Rayla and I were still in the room after everyone had left. I guess they tactically decided to give us our own space, as if we were dating. Not that our relationship was that far from it. And when it was just the 2 of us, I finally got to focus on perhaps the greatest thing about this reserved room in this high-class restaurant. One of the walls was completely glass, and since this place was near the center of the city and so high up, it gave a clear view of the surrounding landscape. I could see the morning rays light up the sides of hundreds of buildings around the kingdom's capital. I could even see part of the royal palace in all its marvelous golden glory. It was a breathtaking sight, and I ended up staring at it for a long time. Rayla took a seat with me, staring out the window for a while before reaching over. She placed a small box in my lap. I looked over at her as she smiled.
A personal gift from yours truly.
I was silent as I opened the box with care. Inside were a pair of gloves. The gloves that Plex had me wear when I first got here were now worn, torn in some places, but since they were for the purpose of covering my crest, I didn't care much. Besides, worn could have its own charm. Then again, the gloves also helped prevent blisters from wielding all the guns I did. But regardless of that, this was a personal present from Rayla. I took them out. They were black and fingerless like my current ones, but these seemed to be made of a high-quality leather, much better than the others. And on the back of the right hand were 4 letters written in red. Bang. I smiled at the thought, and Rayla seemed a bit embarrassed.
I thought since your summons always explode when you shoot them, it would be fitting. Anyway, the gloves are far better than your current ones. They should be comfortable and have good grip, and the leather shouldn't ever get worn down or tear from normal use.
They're great. I spoke after a moment, putting the new gloves on. They really were comfortable, but more than that, they came from a good friend. You know, when I arrived here, I had literally nothing but the clothes on my back. I'll never be able to see my family or friends again, and everything that was ever familiar to me is now gone forever. Rayla was silent, not expecting my sudden confession. I sighed as I looked out the window. As if it already hadn't, the reality of my situation was hitting me hard. I knew nobody, but I was lucky to be caught by Plex and dragged into this business. After that, I met Libidus, and then I met you. I looked her over, seeing Rayla hang her head. Then she suddenly leaned over, resting her temple against my shoulder. I wrapped my arm around her at the same time. I'm really glad I met you, Rayla. It's hard to make genuine friends, especially in a new place. So I feel lucky that you happen to be at the company I got dragged into.
Yeah, I guess I'm lucky too.
She spoke softly, her blood-red hair brushing against my neck as she settled in deeper. We watched the sun come up, and it was only when I heard her snoring that I figured it was time to go. I picked her up and left the market, taking her to my room in the hotel. It was there that I laid her down in my bed before jumping in myself. It was more than big enough for the two of us, so I was comfortable as I let the warmth of the alcohol take my consciousness away. I woke up unpleasantly to an alarm. Taking a few minutes, I eventually glanced at my eternally closed windows, seeing the high sun of noon. Today was the first day of magisterium entries that I needed to be in the city for. It was also my first day of efforts to flip my sleeping schedule back to normal. That would be hard since the light of day now made me drowsy. Glancing over, I could see Rayla still sound asleep next to me. Her sleeping face was adorable, with her hair draped across her lips. Despite supposedly being much older than me, she only looked to be in her late 20s, but there was no mistaking the mature charm she carried, which made her seem a bit older. She really was a beautiful woman. Being active with this job made her body toned and strong. And as I had discovered during our night together, her scars only made her that much hotter. After staring for longer than I should have, I finally pulled myself out of bed. I cleaned myself up and got dressed. Today was the first day of our auction runs, but since I had school to deal with, I wouldn't be participating.
I was probably missing out on a few dozen gold bullion, which made me groan in financial pain. When I was basically prepared to leave, I suddenly remembered the new coat I had received as a gift from last night. I operated the similarly new spatial bracelet, letting the coat appear in my grasp. Even lower-end clothing, like the one I bought for 80 gold bullion, was equipped with all manner of pleasant enhancements like self-cleaning, temperature control, and more. This black coat had all those things and more. But the most obvious part of this item were the purple lines that looked like blood vessels spreading from the spine of the back. I looked at the formations with a clearer head. Down the back from the collar to the tailbone, I could see a long series of thick ridges. It really looked like a spinal column, just like Rayla had described. And from these vertebrae were all these lines that sprouted outward, spreading around to the front of the coat. Perhaps they were more like nerves instead of blood vessels. Either way, all these lines consistently pulsed with the bloom of purple, until I put it on. When I slid my arms through the sleeves, I could feel the coat suddenly pulse with a wave of magic. It reminded me of the first time I got hit by magic during my first heavyweight job, a pulse of mana that disrupted my insides. Except this seemed to envelop me with it, scanning my body and conforming the leather to it. Then I felt something make contact with my mind. It was like I suddenly became aware of a new limb, the coat being the limb. This connection allowed me to see every detail of the coat. I could practically feel it, like it was a second skin. And after a few months, the magic disappeared, and I found that the spinal column of the coat was now seated along my spine. It moved with my body, yet refused to let go, making it stick like a magnet. This was a good thing, of course. This meant it would stay snug while I moved, not restricting my movements or getting annoying. More than all that, it was incredibly comfortable. While the leather was surprisingly thick, the weight was negligible and the feel against my body was divine. It didn't stick or feel abrasive. I wasn't sure how to describe it, but it felt like how I did in my bed when I woke up under the covers during a cold morning. Another thing I noticed was that after the coat had bonded to my body, the pulsating of those purple lines ceased. They faded into a barely faint purple, no longer active like how it had been. Unless you paid attention to it, it would appear like a normal black coat. I was glad, far more than satisfied with this gift. While the connection it formed was mysterious, I assumed it had to do with those abilities Rayla had told me about. After that, I also threw on my gloves. I smiled when I saw a bang on the back of the right hand. It was cute, even cuter when I thought of how Rayla had asked for it to be put there. Suddenly, I heard Rayla's moan as she shifted in my bed. It wasn't long after that she came strolling out of my room, her clothes a mess and her eyes squinting from drowsiness. "So this is your fancy room, huh?" She spoke and cleared her throat while looking around. This hotel room, as expected from the Black Spider Hotel, was more than luxurious. It had an amazing bathroom, heavenly bed, and high-quality interior. The living room had soft carpets and plush couches, along with a few decorations, one of which was a painting of some crazy complicated spell formation. I chuckled a bit. Yeah, it's a bit better than the one at the other hotel I had. It's better than my entire apartment. Speaking of, why haven't you moved into something like a house? What do you think I'm saving up for?
She smirked at me while walking into the kitchen, grabbing a glass and filling it with water. She spoke after taking a sip.
Houses in the city are expensive. I could easily buy a mansion in any other city, but I don't want to leave this place. So I've been saving to get a property on the outskirts, a bit of a distance from the founders market.
And yet you pitched in how much to give me this coat? I raised my brow at her. I really was curious as to how much they spent on me, since I was now planning on paying it back in some way. She snickered at me.
Nice try, John. It was a gift, so you have no choice but to accept it. Besides, we actually don't know how much that coat cost. It was Maxwell who put in the order, and we're sure he paid a lot more than the combination of what we put into it. But as Plex said, it's not like the man isn't wiping his ass with gold paper. Still, you should be thanking him.
I would, but I actually haven't seen him lately. I scratched my head. Ever since a few days ago, Maxwell had disappeared from the Polaris headquarters. I hadn't been to class in around a week due to that. Rayla changed the subject.
You're going to the magisterium, right?
Yeah, although the entrance day is tomorrow, Maxwell told me to come a day early to get things sorted.
Yes, especially for you, since you're already Authority 3. As a forewarning, your summons will be tested and you'll be questioned. They'll probably ask you things about where you got the spell formation, so have an answer prepared. And the Polaris family is not really an answer, nor is Maxwell. I would just say that you're coming from a magic school in another city.
Oh, all right. I nodded at the valid explanation. It wasn't like I had anything else. Rayla nodded.
Yeah, say that you're from the Magic Academy of Halesburg. I've heard of people who have used that excuse.
Sure, thanks.
Of course. Think of it as payment for letting me use your room a bit longer. It is way too early, and I need my beauty sleep. Oh, this coat looks good on you, too.
She walked over, straightening out my collar. Then she leaned in and gave me a hug.
Have fun.
You know I'm not leaving forever, right? The magisterium is close, so I'll still be trying to work.
Yes, but not nearly as much as you were. You'll be lucky to have free time a couple times a week, especially if you're jumping into the higher ranks, so don't worry about coming in. Just focus on getting stronger. That's what will make you the big money.
We separated, after which she walked by me and smacked my ass.
Now, get going, sweet cheeks. The magisterium doesn't work at night like the black market.
All right. With a laugh, I finally left the room, letting Rayla have her way with it. Making my way down, I saw the keymaster at the clerk counter, as always. I questioned, "Do you ever sleep?"
Oh, John, good afternoon, and no, I don't sleep. A full-time job requires full-time attention.
Sheesh. I hope they're making you rich with all this work. Are the benefits at least good?
I would say so.
He smiled at me charmingly.
Off to the magisterium?
I am. That reminds me. You said I would get a room until I entered. Well, that time has come.
Indeed, but don't fret. The magisterium will naturally provide you with residence, so you will no longer need my assistance, although I can't say that the stay there will be quite as pleasant.
Well, of course not. I won't have the hospitality of the keymaster.
You flatter me.
The man chuckled, and I put out my hand.
Thank you for everything, Keymaster. Really, you've made my life much more bearable with your assistance. Hopefully one day I can pay everything back. The Keymaster was silent as he looked at my hand for a few moments. Then, as if pushing past hesitation, he reached out and shook it. Our gloved hands clasped as we both smiled. It is my pleasure, John Cooper. Oh, and take this. Retracting his hand, he suddenly went digging through his coat. Then he took out a gold key. This was a step above the silver key I was given when taking residence. I grabbed it as he spoke. Please, come back any time you need, John. Your room will remain as it has been. Keymaster, you're making me feel like a leech. Well, I had also been thinking of what I can do, so here. Suddenly, I summoned 6 bullets. Unlike normal spirits, like guns and such, these bullets could be summoned and kept permanently in the real world since they were consumable. I placed the bullets on his desk with slight embarrassment. Anything you need me to do, Keymaster, you just tell me and I'll do it. Of course, I'm not strong enough to do anything significant now, but give me time and I'm sure you'll have a valuable asset to help you when you want it. 6 bullets for 6 promises. I see. Very well. I will accept your promise. 6 bullets for 6 promises. Thank you. No, thank you. And have a nice day, John. With that exchange, I finally left the hotel. My destination was the Magisterium, the most prestigious magic college in the kingdom.
Chapter 18. Letter. The Magisterium. It was the second largest property besides the royal palace. It was a college with dozens of buildings and even more facilities where all manner of upcoming magi learned to grow and wield their powers. It was the sole factory that pumped out competent magical soldiers to fight against the scourge. They also supposedly had a monopoly on the spell formations that cultivated authorities, but that was less so for the lower level authorities. Tradition dictated that those with crests were activated at around the age of 16. Then they would go on to receive a few years of magical education before hopefully reaching Authority 4 or 5 and be released into the military around the age of 19 or 20. Basically, I was way past the ordinary age. Even as I stood in front of the gates, I could see plenty of teens with bright faces practically skipping onto the grounds. It was this place that was pulling me from my work in the markets. I felt it was good to start something new, but something in me also wanted to stay where I was. After all, I had been making something of myself. I'd renown. With a sigh, I strolled onto the grounds. Since it was the middle of summer, I could feel the heat bear down from above, a foreign feeling since I had worked in the cool night for 5 months. But my new coat kept my temperature just right. I didn't sweat even though it had to be at least 90 degrees out. As I walked onto the grounds, though, I suddenly heard a ring in my head. I lifted my aerial.
I see you. Stay there.
It was Maxwell's voice, something I hadn't heard in almost a week. A minute or so later, I saw him walk over to me. He was dressed in his luxurious navy blue robes accentuated with gold and a few jewels, clearly displaying his rich disposition. His sharp face eyed me before nodding.
That coat fits you well. A worthwhile purchase.
I hear I have you to thank for it, so thank you, Maxwell. I hope I can pay you back.
That would take a while. Don't worry about it and follow me.
He waved and I followed with a smile. He led me onto the grounds where we entered one of the first buildings within the central plaza, an administration building. Bypassing the clerk, we found an elevator and rose a few floors before stopping at an office. He entered, greeting a man.
Berman, this is John, the one I was telling you about.
Maxwell brought me forward as I observed this Berman. He was a stout man with a thick beard and glasses. Besides the robes, he looked like a normal office man. But within his body I could sense a thick aura of power, one I only recognized in knights. It seemed he was really strong, at least an authority 8 like Rayla. He nodded to me.
So you're the student. Definitely different from the ordinary students we get every year.
He's already faced plenty of adversity, and is an authority 3. I'd like to place him directly within the 4th year class, particularly the elites.
That's too much, Maxwell. The 4th year class I can do, but he'll have to earn a place in the elites naturally. Well, at least his age won't raise any questions, though his authority is a bit low.
His power makes up for it. Just get him in the 4th year.
Sure.
With that, Berman retrieved a few sheets of paper and started writing. As he did, he stuck his hand out.
ID?
Oh, here. Pulling out my card, I tilted it and retrieved my citizenship ID that I received a long while ago. However, the sight of my platinum card made Berman's eyes bulge a little as he took my ID.
You're something else, huh? I guess Maxwell isn't totally out of his mind.
He shook his head while planting the ID against the papers, copying it in some magical way. He then stamped my ID card, marking it before doing the same on the papers. With that, he was finished. Maxwell took one sheet while Berman kept the rest.
There, that's the entry form. He's been given residence and the classes you asked for. His ID is also that of a 4th year's. No questions will be asked about his authority, but his power still needs to be tested. So go ahead and head to the grounds. Just show them that paper.
Sure. Thank you, Berman.
It's nothing. At least I got to see something interesting.
He smirked at me while I was dragged out by Maxwell. Then I was taken past the plaza and onto some training grounds. They were large fields of what seemed like soft stone. There were also plenty of kids already getting tested, including a line. Maxwell sighed and pointed.
Just go wait in line and show them this paper when you need to.
All right. And should I be showing off everything?
No, you have multiple weapons, so just take out one and use it. Don't worry about looking good. Just get your power logged and finish.
Okay. With that, I stepped into the line. I was surrounded by young kids, some as young as the minimum age of 16. The oldest one I saw might have been 18. I was 22, and while I wasn't much older, I felt far older. Hell, I felt years older than when I had first come to this world. The black market had changed me greatly. I waited in line for a while as Maxwell stood to the side lazily. When it was close to my turn, a kid nearby suddenly spoke.
I like your coat.
I turned, seeing a boy who looked to be around 17 or 18. He seemed extroverted, so I just nodded. Thanks. You look pretty powerful.
I'm already authority too. My family had the spell formations for it.
Is that right? What family?
I'm not sure you'd know.
Try me. I casually went along as his voice turned low. I didn't expect the answer.
They're kind of hidden. We're called the Tavera family.
Oh, I see.
You know about us? So you've been to the black market?
Something like that. I chuckled at the coincidence. At the same time, it was my turn. I waved to the boy. Tell your patriarch that John said hello.
Patriarch?
He seemed a bit baffled as I stepped toward a man behind a desk. I handed him the papers.
What type of magus?
Summoner.
And what type of summoner?
Cold. He seemed disappointed, perhaps a bit pitying, as he pointed.
Go up to the target dummies and utilize your power against them. You have 1 minute to attack the dummy.
All right. With that, I moved over. There were a dozen target dummies that looked metal, so I casually picked one. In my hand appeared a revolver. Specifically, it was the Colt Peacemaker, one of the most famous revolvers that symbolized the American West, chambered in .45 Colt. In the past, when I had communed with this gun, I'd received the memories of an outlaw who was a particularly good shot. He wasn't known for his quick draws, but he made up for it with sheer accuracy, especially when riding a horse. I had gained his skills that I found to be fitting since I was usually running away from something in the trenches. I could wield this Peacemaker like a pro. Spinning it in my hand, I silently took aim at one of the dummies. My time had started. I pulled back the hammer and fired. An explosion rang out, startling everyone around me. Looking past the gun, I saw my bullet hit the dummy in the head, yet off to the side a bit. Not quite a perfect shot, but still a killing blow. Since I had 5 more bullets, I let them loose. Bang, 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 bang. 1 more to the head and 3 to the chest. After that, I started ejecting cartridges and replacing them with new ones. Once it was fully loaded, I decided to have fun and taped down the trigger while fanning the hammer. Bang, bang, bang. Shorts went out in rapid succession, smoke rising from the barrel of my gun. After the last round, I found that most of my shots hit center mass. Only one had grazed the side of its body. All my bullets left deep, deep depressions on the dummy. It seemed to be normal iron or the like. I clicked my tongue. Decent accuracy, I'll take it. With that, I let the revolver return to the dimension, walking back to the clerk. Is that all?
Yes. Wait a moment.
Hurriedly writing things down on the paper, he seemed to describe my ability in detail. And he got many things right. I wielded a weapon that fired small projectiles at high speeds, and I could fire 6 projectiles before reloading each projectile individually into the weapon. At the end, he rated my power as exceptionally lethal, but containing no supportive or defensive utility. With that, he handed my sheet back to me. I walked over to Maxwell with it. He nodded.
Very well. We have skipped most of the troublesome work. You will receive all your academic materials during your first day, so for now, we must settle you into your new residence. Come,
He waved me along. Leaving the training grounds, we entered deeper into the college. The place we arrived was at the residential building for all fourth-year students. It was smaller, but more luxurious than the buildings for any of the other years. It was basically two massive mansions squished together. On the inside, there were plenty of rooms that resembled small suites. All of these students were well cared for. On the way in, I only saw a few other students. They all seemed to be around my age, perhaps with a year of difference. I was observed with curiosity when I walked to my room with Maxwell. It was when we arrived at the top floor that he finally stopped.
Here, room 312. This shall be your home for the next year at minimum.
He unlocked it with a key and beckoned me in. I strolled through the doorway and saw the moderately luxurious interior. It wasn't anything compared to my room at the hotel, but I would still be comfortable here. I bobbed my head. All right, is there any more business to take care of?
I took care of everything already. I have assigned your classes and arranged your cultivation materials. You will receive everything tomorrow. Remember, you now begin in the morning, not end.
Yeah, I'm already working on my sleep schedule.
Good. A letter will be delivered to you tomorrow morning containing directions for the day. And remember, you will still be having lessons with me. 3 days a week to start. There is still much to teach you before you inevitably leave.
Oh. I sighed. It seemed like I would still be forking out money for him. Not that I didn't have more than enough to last me a while.
Also, your bill has gone up to 10 gold bullion a week, since I'll be teaching more core material.
What? With that bombshell, the man finally took his leave. I was left groaning in financial pain.
Oh God, why is there a delivery here? A younger kid was skittish as he ventured deep into the academy grounds. It was a place only the elites of the magisterium would normally go, a place that he had no right being near. The Year 4 residences. It was a legendary place that everyone sought to rise toward, to be placed in. To be there was an honor that earned you renown for years to come. All the great legends of the school were located here. He was only supposed to be delivering first-day letters to all the new freshmen. It was supposed to be a simple and easy job. But then, he found one letter that was addressed to room 312 of the Year 4 residence. At first, he thought it was a great opportunity to sneak a peek at the place. Everyone dreamed of going over there, so he quickly took the letter and rushed over. But the closer he got, the more pressure mounted. Just walking through the Year 3 residential area was nerve-wracking enough. Those guys were psychos that fought tooth and nail to rise higher. He felt like he would be challenged if he so much as looked at someone. And the silence of the Year 4 area only made it worse. He looked at the entrance to the building. It was luxurious, fitted with gold and artistic pillars that symbolized greatness. And on the inside, he saw the hall walls that were lined of portraits of those legendary names who had come and gone with great prestige. There were even weapons, all of them giving off daunting auras. The young man didn't want to be there, even if it were a chance of a lifetime. But he trudged through, taking the elevator to the top floor. This is a fourth-year residence, so why are one of these letters going here? He muttered while searching, and looking at the golden numbers on each door, he found himself going the right way. But then he turned a corner and was startled.
A large man stood before him, one whose gaze made him shake in anxiety. He was tall, a long sword on his back that radiated the light of glory and ferocity. This young man, like all others who were fans of those renowned figures at the top of the rankings, knew who it was. But he didn't so much as make a peep when the man took the letter from his hand, glancing at it curiously.
So, I was right. Some newbie managed to sneak his way to the top. I'll take care of this.
With that, he turned and slowly walked off with heavy steps. The young man stared until he disappeared. Finally, he caught his breath and turned, running out of the residence. "That was Severing Blade Raven! I just met the rank 20 elite and lived!"
Ugh. After waking up to banging on the door, I sat up groggily. I was not handling this sleep schedule change well. 2 seconds, damn! I shouted to the impatient person at the door. Wiping my eyes, I sighed and walked over in nothing but a pair of loose pants. Yes? I opened the door and looked through with squinted eyes, but the sight wasn't one I was expecting. A man, perhaps as tall as I was, stood across from me with a large sword on his back. At first glance, he gave off the feeling of a knight, so my guard instinctually went up. He looked me over with silence. During that time, I started to realize that he was rather powerful. At the least, he was on another level compared to those psychos in the trenches. I asked, "Seems the delivery boys here are rather amazing." "Excuse me?" His masculine voice came out, seemingly not pleased by my remark. I just nodded toward the letter in his hand. "That is for me, isn't it?" He hummed before handing it to me. Then I shut the door. "Thanks." He stopped the door with his hand, pushing it back open with strength I couldn't resist. After all, he was a knight. No matter how fit or strong I got, knights would always surpass me. I could only contend with low-level ones, and higher-level ones forced me to keep a distance. I frowned. "If there's nothing else, please take your leave. Otherwise, I'll be removing your hand from my door personally." "At least you've got balls. What's your name?" He leaned forward threateningly, making me wary. "None of your concern, otherwise you'd know it. Now get your face out of my doorway before I tear you a third eye socket." My revolver appeared, a barrel raising to his eye level. This caused him to smile. "A cold summoner. How underwhelming. I'll be speaking with whoever decided that throwing you into our residence was a good idea." "Go ahead, dipshit, so long as you stop interrupting my morning." I slammed my door as he finally backed away. I then heard his footsteps grow distant. My guard went down as I took a deep breath. Sheesh, I am not a morning person. After that, I cleaned myself up and got dressed. I opened the letter as I walked out of my room. It was the day of the opening ceremony for the magisterium. Chapter 19. Orientation.
"Let's go! I'm coming! We gotta get good seats!"
As I walked to the magisterium's massive stadium, I could hear hundreds of students running past me with excited faces.
The whole thing caused me to smile. This was basically high school for all these kids, so I could understand their happiness. The stadium was basically a huge coliseum. It had one massive field that was bigger than a football field and was surrounded by rows and rows of stairs and seats. The place could easily fit tens of thousands, more than enough for the entire school, and then some. I entered and found that they divided the seating by year. Walking up, I was planning to follow the very few fourth-year students in when I was suddenly stopped.
ID, please.
You didn't ask for theirs. I pointed to the other fourth-year students who were walking through. They just waltzed right in. He smiled wryly.
Sorry, sir. I recognize them, but not you. I need to check.
Fine. Here. I retrieved my ID, which he took and saw a big number 4 on. He handed it back with a slight bow.
Sorry about that. Please, go ahead.
I hummed while walking past. Then I entered a reserved section for all the fourth years. Before I sat down, I glanced over. I could only see about 40 students here. Without a doubt, they were all powerful, at least an authority or so higher than myself, but there were so few. Compared to the freshman seating that was already jam-packed, each person was basically taking their own row, if not grouped up in small cliques. I was pretty casual as I found myself a seat, but I still couldn't help but notice the not-so-few stares. Nobody in this school knew who I was, and I suddenly jumped into the fourth-year class. It would naturally raise questions, and some might not take kindly to it, like that one guy who disturbed my already unpleasant morning. But I couldn't think that much about it. I really was just here to cultivate higher power and train myself against monsters instead of humans. And now, a performance from the College of Enchanted Arts. An announcement was suddenly made as a few dozen people walked into the middle of the field. They seemed like a big marching band, or perhaps an orchestra. Either way, they had many instruments and dancers. It wasn't long before I heard music, and the dancers began going through their routine. There were lights that lit up with waves of their hands and feet, and the music reached my ears rather pleasantly, both upbeat and soothing. But I wasn't too impressed. I had seen too many of these displays during the auction days in the Black Spider Market, and those people had such amazing skills, easily dwarfing these newbies. Still, I enjoyed the entertainment that all the freshmen were going nuts over. It lasted quite a while, but when it finally ended, a figure of authority stepped out along with waves of applause. "Allow me to introduce myself." His voice reverberated through the air. It was deep, but more than that, it carried actual power. His words commanded attention and respect. "I am Yatra Carrion, the President of the Magisterium and Duke of the Kingdom of Dragon Tongue. I welcome everyone to this most prestigious institution." Everyone went dead silent as he spoke. You could practically see the tangible reverence coming off those students in the other stands. Truly, he was a great man who stood at the pinnacle of this kingdom, and not just socially. To rise in this world, power was everything. This duke was only below the king, and that meant he held power that was capable of dominating damn near the entire world of magi. He was at least an Authority 10, if not 11, and although Authority 10 was only 2 levels away from Authority 8, where Rayla stood, truly, the difference was insurmountable, not to mention Authority 11. It was said that Authority 12 was the highest peak of power. I wonder if the king was at that godlike level. Yatra went on to speak about the magisterium and its great purpose. He spoke of the evil scourge and how we were the greatest hope of humanity to put an end to that extinction-level threat. This place was not only an institution to cultivate powerful magi, but to encourage competition and growth through adversity. Through fighting monsters and sparring with our fellow magi, we would learn how to better our skills and spells until all of us could become a force that turned the tide of the everlasting war. It was all motivational and inspiring, which was nice, but I couldn't help but see the darker side of it. These magi were all better than the ordinary human, but in the end, anybody below the top were still merely soldiers. They were more like really effective cannon fodder rather than some special elite force. But unfortunately, in this world where there was an unending war with an enemy that seemed impossible to kill, the reality could be nothing but dark. I sighed as Yatra finished his speech. Now, I will allow your council president to take the stage. Once again, welcome to the magisterium. For honor.
For honor! For honor!
The stadium chanted the mantra of the kingdom with Yatra. Then the council president took the stand.
Good morning, everybody! My name is Tally.
Oh, jeez. Getting to this point, I groaned and tuned out. The girl up at the podium was an overly enthusiastic third year who spoke of nothing but high hopes and sugar-coated expectations. She was like some kind of mascot. And sure enough, I saw plenty of the fourth years get up and walk out. I decided I would join them, leaving the stadium before everyone else. Besides, I had things to do. Heading to the library, I picked up a few books from a nice clerk lady. After that, I went to the resource distribution center where I received the spell formation and cultivation crystal that would allow me to cultivate my fourth authority. Simply by joining the magisterium, I was allowed to rise to the next level. Then again, what was Authority 4 to these people? I could imagine what would be asked of people in order to receive the spell formations for higher authorities. No doubt, most of it came in the form of military service or merits. Alongside these items came my class schedule. There was a class for cultivation, but that was only one of many I was assigned. Scourge analysis, geography, emergency medical proficiency. These 3 classes would take up most of my day, along with daily cultivation. But there was one that I looked forward to. Applied hunting. I muttered curiously at the description for this class. Basically, every other month there would be a 2 or 3 week long period where the entire class would go out on a field trip and hunt. This could include beast hunting in a controlled forest reserve or hunting the scourge alongside the military. This controlled hunting allowed all us magi to put our powers to the live test. After all, practicality meant everything. Theory meant nothing if it couldn't deliver on the battlefield. There would be nothing the first month of school, and come the second month, they would be throwing us out there for a whole 2 weeks. It seemed I would have time to get my bearings before getting thrown into the deep end. On my class list were the times for each class. Tapping my aerial, I checked the time and decided to make my way. Scourge analysis was the first class of the day. It was a class that taught everything regarding the scourge. Monsters, materials, weak points, tendencies, geographical habitats, and counter-tactics. Normally, someone in the 4th year wouldn't be taking this class. Having gone through several years, they had already learned everything they needed to. But since this was my first year, I had none of those basics, which was why I was thrown into the freshman class. I had to admit, it was a bit embarrassing. When class started, I was surrounded by nothing but young teens. I was severely out of place, wondering if I would be able to get away with teaching myself. It was no different for the class after that. Geography wasn't normal geography that I had thought it would be. One could say it was an analysis of the macro-scale movements and shifts in the scourge's activity. It analyzed the territory that they had conquered and the areas that were currently war zones. Though there was also some geographical study, primarily teaching major landmarks around the world that we would need to know about. Still, it was hard to focus when a bunch of teens were glancing at me constantly. I chose a back seat, but even the kid next to me was constantly stealing glances. I bared with it. I knew I would probably end up out there fighting the scourge, so this was knowledge I needed to know. I'd fought people up until now, not monsters. The two were radically different, even though I didn't have the experience to determine such. I basically likened it to the difference between two boxers fighting each other and a boxer fighting a bear. The same tactics naturally couldn't be used. And many of the things they talked about, even on the first day, surprised me. The scourge, according to public sources, was made out to be nothing but a mass of horrific monsters that sought the destruction of the world. We were pretty evenly matched with them in sheer power, but while we had the advantage in personal power, they had the advantage in numbers. But there were some special entities that posed the greatest threat. After all, nobody cared about the cannon fodder. There were two types of scourge creatures that were the most concerning. First, the ones who gained intelligence with power, earning the ability to control the scourge forces in strategic ways. And second, the humans who were captured and demonized, turning into an inhuman monster that was both intelligent and powerful. The scourge didn't just destroy, it devoured. And occasionally, the unlucky victims would be demonized and warped into a monster beyond their own will. The most horrific way to die to the scourge, and one of the darkest realities of the war. It was when I heard about this that I couldn't help but remember Libidus's words from that night at the auction house. They seriously loved each other. I mean, she almost killed herself over it. The scourge took her man in the worst way possible. Demonization. Was that what had happened to Rayla's husband? Not only was he captured by the scourge, but was he demonized and then reappeared on the battlefield, confirming his demonization? Was he killed, or is he still one of those monsters? I was pretty sure he'd been killed. If not, there was no way that Rayla would have recovered as much as she had seemed to. She probably would have remained in the military until he was relieved of his monstrous existence. Only his death could allow her to move on, even if only a little. It was a mind-numbing thought to have. I couldn't fathom that kind of grief, to know that the person you loved with your heart and soul had been warped into that kind of monstrosity, and to have to kill him even after that. I suddenly felt a wave of sorrow for Rayla. I almost wanted to call her up the instant I inferred these things, but it wasn't like I could explain that I knew about her husband. Libidus had gone behind her back to tell me that before she did. Shit. I cursed under my breath in the middle of class, earning a few glances. Now my mood was ruined, and I had a new, irreversible hatred for the scourge.
If they were simply an enemy, then I could sympathize, since there were always two sides to a war.
But this monstrous entity was nothing but a demonic stain upon the world. Nothing but a parasite that wrought ruin. It seemed I now had another reason to get stronger, other than mere survival. And I was glad that I could wreak my own retribution with the most lethal weapon in 2 worlds. The first day passed, and I walked to my new on-campus residence with a neutral mood. After learning about nothing but the scourge, the last class of the day lightened the darkness with the lecture about the body. It was here that I learned that anatomy or medical science was just as advanced in this world as on Earth. They knew everything I knew and more. They knew about cells, the components of cells and their functions, along with the myriads of biological functions that riddled our impossibly complex bodies. Not only that, but they had learned about how the magical forces of this world interacted with the body. Of course, that stuff only appeared in the more advanced classes. I had expected a primitive or vague detailing on the body and medical care, but I found quite the opposite. In fact, this class of mine was looking to be more of a paramedic course than otherwise. We would learn not just about the body, but all about the types of medical care. They would teach us how to similarly respond to various injuries, making us EMTs in training. This also seemed to be the most difficult class in the magisterium, obviously because of how complex it was and how much stuff there was to memorize. But then, all of these people were going to be specialists on the battlefield. It was rather important that they at least knew some stuff. I was similarly in distress during the class. I wasn't cut out for memorizing all that information. A reason I'd never even fathomed becoming a doctor. Too much to learn. But I found myself keeping up, especially in my other courses, and I knew why. Psyche, the power of the mind. Summoners, although generally known for being weak, were also known for one other thing, being the smartest people in the kingdom. With minds that became sharper, faster, and stronger with every authority they gained, summoners received many boosts to their cognitive abilities. They were the most successful in academics, even beyond warlocks who studied magic spells. This would naturally help immensely in regard to my classes. I almost looked forward to it. Beyond that, though, I only had one thing to focus on. Cultivating my authority was my most important task. With a greater authority, I could unlock bigger and badder guns. Those would secure my survival, especially since I was sure my first hunting trip wouldn't be an easy one. I was hoping that I could advance in like a month, like I had been. But upon opening the book to see the formations I needed to use, I couldn't help but lose a bit of hope. This is absurd. What am I looking at? A circuit board? The book was filled with all these impossibly complex lines and symbols. It was hard to even look at, let alone use. Seemed like Authority 4 was a rather massive jump. But I had a better mind. I knew I couldn't be held up for long by this complexity, so I dedicated at least a few hours to studying the formations. Besides, I found it oddly enjoyable. Studying the formations wasn't as simple as tracing the lines in your mind. If it were that easy, everyone would be able to advance. No, it was what the lines and symbols represented that halted people's progress. The formations were a guide. By trying to mimic them, people would come to understand the formation within the magical realm and learn how to use it in order to cultivate greater power. It was like learning a language, and whenever I studied the formation, I would slowly gain understandings. It was like a bar that slowly filled up with progress, as if I were downloading information into my mind from the file that was the formation. And the feelings of progress were nice, even if tiring. But I quickly figured out that it would take much more time for me to so much as decipher the formation, let alone cultivate the power. A month wouldn't be enough. But up until now, I'd been cultivating every day, so I had gotten used to the slow but steady progression. So I stuck around in my room, waiting for the end of the day, where I would go to bed early and catch up on sleep.
Chapter 20. Training. Another day came around, and I wasn't disturbed like the first. All was normal, except for the fact that I was completely wrong about the schedule regarding our hunting trips. The fourth years had things a bit different, and what I had heard about only applied to those in earlier years. Turns out, the hunting trips would be 1 month on and 1 month off. That meant at the end of the month, I would leave for an entire month on this trip. And I wasn't simply going to a forest inhabited by monsters. No, I would be joining a special military unit that specialized in small-scale scourge hunts. That was to say that I was being thrown straight into the deep end, and much earlier than I had anticipated. All this information came to me when I arrived back home from classes, seeing that a delivery had been delivered by Maxwell. A letter detailed the aforementioned information and also came with an interesting surprise. The primary focus of his letter and the package that came with it was regarding the white crystal. The church pioneered the first and best way to purify black crystals infected with the scourge's poison, creating white crystals. These crystals could be used in magical devices or for cultivating authorities. But the magisterium, or the kingdom, didn't use the white crystals of the church. In order to combat the church's monopoly on the crystals, they developed their own method, an inferior one. It purified most, but not all of the scourge's poison. This created purity grades for the crystals and introduced problems that came with cultivating them. It was no different from cultivating with poison. The energy given to you was impure, and methods had also been created to purify the energy inside of you after the cultivation was done. Basically, the kingdom created a problem and its solution all in an attempt to fight economically with the church. While it was a natural course of action for two massive organizations, it was still a shitty situation for those who were forced to use the tainted crystals. All those at the magisterium and the kingdom's military were those victims. Of course, many went and got their hands on the church's white crystals anyway, and thankfully, Maxwell was making himself out to be one of my avenues. Inside the package I received was a white crystal, a grade above the previous one I used. Maxwell said that due to the nature of my call, I couldn't cultivate with the impure crystals at all. My call would reject any form of impurity, so I was forced to use white crystals. Not that I had an issue with this. And with the white crystal was another set of advancement formations that he told me to use instead of the standard ones. They were even more complex, and he didn't explain why, but since I was already going along with his guidance, I couldn't stop here. Thanking him inwardly for the help, I threw the crystal into my spatial bracelet. I simultaneously stashed the other crystal away. I wouldn't need it anymore, not that I could begin cultivating immediately. Beyond that, there was only one other piece of information that I paid attention to. Everyone at the magisterium was placed into combat classes.
These classes taught knights martial arts, taught warlocks how to use their spells in various situations, and taught summoners how to effectively utilize their summons. But I wasn't placed into any combat classes, or at least not on paper. Apparently, Maxwell had arranged something else for me. It was something like a club. The place was basically a training ground. Due to the unique nature of my summons, I couldn't go fighting anybody for fear of outright killing them. Guns were kind of an all-or-nothing weapon. So he put me into this club that I would report to when classes were over. So the next day, after going through all my classes, I went around to a certain building number located in an obscure corner of the campus. Only it wasn't a building that I came to. It was a gate with the number across its signboard. I walked through, seeing a small building to the side. I went and knocked on the door, waiting several seconds before it opened.
Huh? Who are you?
The man who greeted me was a rough one. He was old, his eyes sharp and scrutinizing, and the wrinkles on his face scrunching in a perpetual frown. But he was dressed in rather luxurious clothing. I recognized its quality, even though it wasn't an extravagant robe like what Maxwell wore. In the black market, where nice things were everywhere and also exorbitantly expensive, I'd developed a good eye for something's quality. I greeted back casually. "Hi, I'm John. I was told to report here after classes."
Oh, you're Maxwell's apprentice. Come in then, I'll explain everything.
I walked in with his beckon, closing the door behind me. I found that this small room was completely dark except for the dozen screens that covered the front wall. Each one displayed a different video feed, some of them displaying two. In each feed was a person. I saw some knights, several warlocks, and only a few summoners. They were all fighting, and their opponents weren't each other, but what looked like robots. Of course, they couldn't be mechanical robots. I saw all these magical designs on their bodies, ones that glowed whenever their monstrous bodies moved just like beasts.
This is the magisterium's finest training ground. Not everybody comes to know about this place's existence, and even fewer actually get to use it. Only the elites can come here freely, but you've been made something of an exception. You can thank Maxwell for that, but there is a condition.
The man eyed me.
You can use this place for the next month until you go on your next excursion, but if you don't produce satisfactory results while on that trip, then you won't be allowed back. Now, allow me to explain what you do here.
He pointed to the screens.
Every day, I set up a different scenario using the battle puppets. These scenarios are designed to mimic scourge battles. From hive raids to frontal mass battles, I can reproduce any kind of scenario imaginable. And you will be faced with those scenarios. The difficulty level varies, and sometimes I set up scenarios where you work in teams. Regardless, this is a place to train you in truly practical combat, second only to fighting actual battles with the scourge. With your lack of experience, this is a holy place for you, so cherish this next month wisely. And since the scenario has only started recently, you can still join in. Here.
The old man handed me a necklace. It was flat and made of thick black metal. When I put it on, it sat snugly against my skin, using magic to adhere to my body without moving or disturbing me.
That's a safety band. It'll keep you alive, but be warned, you can still be injured, and heavily at that if you're stupid. Not only will you learn to kill here, but you'll learn how to estimate an enemy's power level and how to respond. Now, the scenario today is a basic one, some jungle hunting. There are monsters and humanoid puppets all throughout the forest landscape. Your sightlines are limited, so your ears will be your best ally. How you approach battles is up to you. Either way, your goal is to fight on the leaderboard against the others. Tap the jewel on your band.
Following his directions, my finger found the protruding jewel on the necklace, tapped it once and seeing a screen appear in front of me. It was a leaderboard containing a dozen or so names. Every participant was on there, and it showed a point score behind their name. It was no different from a game, making me smile a bit.
Wave the screen and it'll go down. And when you're ready, you can step through the portal outside. It'll drop you in a random spot in the forest at least 100 meters away from an enemy. And if you decide that you're done with training, tap the jewel on your band and say, "I quit." That'll bring you back out here. Now, go on. I look forward to what Maxwell's apprentice has up his sleeve.
He waved me away, and I took one more glance at the screens before leaving. There was a portal on the side of the building, so after summoning a lever-action rifle, I headed through it. I really was thrown right in the middle of a jungle. My reappearance came with a small wave of disorientation. I quickly focused, though, and took a look around me. The jungle was still bright, but the ground was covered in mud, bushes, vines, and tree roots. It was a complex terrain, and fighting here could obviously be dangerous. So I decided that I needed to keep my enemies at a distance, and if they found me, then I would try and take them in a head-on manner. My shotgun should take care of anything that got too close for comfort. My coat also gave me a source of comfort. It undoubtedly had extraordinary defensive abilities, and Rayla had told me that it came with some other special abilities. Unfortunately, I wasn't told how to activate it, so I would either have to ask later or figure it out myself. With my reassurances, I started slowly walking through the jungle. I kept my head on a swivel, constantly surveying my surroundings and waiting, until I heard a faint brush of some leaves in the distance, making my head instinctively snap over. My hearing and instincts had become refined after many weeks in the trenches. I could pick up on even faint footsteps, as I had been subject to no small amount of ambushes. So my hands moved instinctively, my body lowering and my eyes taking aim across the sights of my gun. At the end of my barrel, I could see a monster. It wasn't an animal, but one of the puppets that was shaped like one. It was an agile creature, looking closer to a tiger than anything else. It didn't seem to have seen me yet, so I kneeled down and steadied my barrel. This would serve as good aim training as well. I was already glad Maxwell had got me into this place. With those thoughts, I centered my sights, and I didn't hesitate in pulling the trigger. Bang! The sound shook the jungle, and in the distance, I could see the monster drop to the floor, dead. In my vision, I could see the number 100 pop up, the points I earned for the kill. Smiling, I got up and started running. Letting off shots attracted everything's attention toward me. It was the fatal flaw of my guns. I couldn't be quiet with them. But I could mitigate the downsides by changing positions. Even if I ran into enemies while relocating, it was better than being swarmed from all sides. And as expected, it wasn't long before I encountered another puppet. Except this beast was bigger, like a bear. It found me and charged. I stopped and raised my gun, slowing my breath and firing. Bang! Another shot, and I cleanly hit the bear's skull, but it didn't go down. The bear was dazed for several moments, not dead, but obviously hurt. I took the opportunity to infuse some power into my gun. It glowed with a faintly holy light, as if being blessed. And my next shot was all the bear could take. Its head exploded with the empowered bullet, dropping to the floor. Dropped like a drunk stripper. All right, let's get out of here. I found another direction and took off after smiling at the 400 points I got. After not encountering anything for a while, though, I decided to drop down and hide. Fighting enemies was easy, but tiring. If I wanted to spend some time in this training ground, then I would need to space my battles. This is why I found a large brush and settled inside of it. I didn't really care about getting dirty either, since my coat was always comfortable and could clean itself later. From there, I watched a few monsters go by at a distance, and when I decided that enough time had passed, I targeted one and took my shot from the bush. Although I didn't have a scope, my aim was still decent enough to hit some shots at around 100 meters. Besides, it wasn't like these puppets were small. Bang! Smoke rose up within the bush as the monster dropped dead. After that, I reloaded some bullets and waited. Naturally, monsters made their way to my general position, and from the bush I took several out. I had to empower several of my shots. That was the proper term for using my isekai to make my spirits, or my guns, stronger. And with every kill, my points grew. It was only when I had killed 6 that I finally rushed out of my bush, a large group converging on my location. I fought off several monsters while running, killing 4 more and eventually managing to calm the agitation my gunshots had caused. Like that, I repeated a cycle of hiding, killing, running, and hiding again. The forest was big, and there were varying densities of monsters. But I noticed that the further in any direction I went, the stronger the monsters got. But that just meant more points. Besides, not all monsters had tough bodies. Many were of the warlock type, casting their own specialty spells, but those were the easy ones. My killing was good, and my routine went well until I encountered another person, not a puppet. Hiding within a foxhole underneath some tree roots and bushes, I spotted a person in my sights not that far away. They seemed to be looking for something, probably me, as I had been causing tons of noise. But I just watched for a while. I tracked them with my sights, my finger brushing the trigger while imagining if I could hit my shots while they were moving. It was a woman, and an agile one at that, as she could scale and hop between trees. She had short brown hair and wielded a sword, obviously a knight. Made me a bit more wary. Knights were my bane. But, as I imagined taking my shot, something interesting happened. It was right as I had the thought of pulling the trigger that the girl suddenly jolted and dashed out of the way with an inhuman agility. Of course, I wasn't actually planning on taking the shot, but it seemed that she had sensed my intentions. For a moment, I thought that something like that should be impossible. How could she possibly read my mind from a distance, or at all for that matter, especially since she was totally unaware of me? But after dodging a non-existent shot, she suddenly turned toward my general direction. She didn't immediately spot me, but it wasn't long after that I saw her eyes lock onto me through the bushes. I smiled as she crouched aggressively. Then I rose. I slipped out of the bushes, waving with a smile. Hey there, what's your name?
I should be asking you that. I don't recognize you.
She narrowed her eyes and straightened her body, feeling less threatened now that I lowered my gun. I shrugged. I'm new here. This is my first day at these training grounds. I'm kinda having fun, too.
You're the one making all that noise?
Guilty as charged.
A cold summoner.
She had a peculiar look while observing my gun. Even I could sense the type of magus a person was. It was a sixth sense, so she could obviously do the same, especially since she was probably of a higher authority. Then she looked at my face.
You're the new fourth year.
You've heard of me?
Not just anybody can walk straight into our class. Besides, Rayvon made a big deal about you. It seems he lost since you're here.
Rayvon?
The severing blade, yes? My, you really are new here. You don't even know the names of the elites.
She smirked a bit, and I couldn't help but chuckle. Well, I'm not the best with names, but I'd still like to hear yours. I smiled and approached, putting out my hand. The girl smiled and shook it.
Tana.
Nice to meet you, Tana. I'm John.
Hello, John. You're a noisy one, but since you're here, you must be powerful despite being new.
Yes, and I apologize for startling you earlier. I chuckled while remembering how frantically Tana had dodged my imaginary bullet. My words made her tilt her head as we separated hands.
Yes, I was actually confused as to why you were so open with your intent.
Considering the fact that I have no idea what that is, you can probably imagine that I didn't do it on purpose.
Wow, you're really new.
She was quite baffled by my ignorance. I couldn't help but sigh at that. Yes, I'm still learning a lot.
You didn't learn anything in your combat class?
I don't have a combat class. The lethality of my weapons prohibits fighting others.
I see.
She eyed the rifle in my hands and glanced in the distance at the few puppets I had killed. I hadn't attacked more than a few times, and every target had died. If that wasn't lethal, then what was? I smiled. Care to teach me about this so-called intent?
I'm not exactly here to teach, but I'll make a bet.
Shoot. I nodded, and she brought up the leaderboard.
Beat me on the leaderboard, and I'll teach you.
I seem to have a long ways to go, then.
You sure do. So let's see if your lethality can earn the tutelage of an elite. Of course, I won't just sit idly either.
She spun and crouched, launching her body into the air and onto a tree branch about 40 meters away. She then looked behind her at me, waving with a snicker.
I'm not interested in being a tutor, so you better get going.
Playing hard to get, I see. I chuckled as she dashed into the distance. I couldn't fathom the kind of strength or agility her body had to be able to bound dozens of meters with each step. Once she promptly disappeared, I pulled up the leaderboard. My name was sitting nicely at the bottom, and from there I searched for Tana. I quickly found her name. Out of the 14 people currently in this jungle, she was sitting high and mighty at third place. I had a grand total of 5,300 points, but she had a whopping 64,000. Bullshit. As if I even had a chance. Well, I guess I should at least try. Let's get out of last place first. With that, I sent my gun back to the dimension and started jogging. The deeper I went, the more powerful the monsters, and the more points I got. If I wanted any kind of chance, then I would need to test my wit with those beasts. And I didn't stop for anything, not even the few beasts that ended up in my path. Soon enough, I arrived where I wanted to be.